he realized it hit out of nowhere. Hero Carderosa jolted awake. But even while he lives in the kingdom of Carderosa, old memories from his past life still burn inside his head. He suddenly remembered, back in his past life, he'd been just an office worker in Japan, a packed-to-the-max train, a soul-crushing day at work, and human fairness that never shows up when you need it. He broke free of his old life and got reincarnated as a prince in another world's kingdom. For one wild second, he even felt happy, like becoming a prince was finally the best thing that could happen. But this place is living under the poverty line, drowning in nothing but need. The hero clashed with his mentor in a brutal, no-holds-barred showdown. Mentors blew in with impact, and that attack got dodged in a heartbeat. Then he snapped the sword up and aimed it dead at his throat. He finally crushed his mentor, his fate at last sealed. He slid his sword back into its sheath. He crushed his Clerford and left the sword instructor, the Clerfery clan's leader, in ruins just 2 short years. The hero thanked him, but if he had still had the muscle he wielded in his youth, there's no way he'd have ended up winning. He said the defeat was always coming anyway. At this pace, he'll steamroll so hard that even his enemies won't dare fear him. But then the hero shot back. Who in their right mind would even want to attack this country? Even if they get crushed, nobody can steal a thing from them. Other countries ignore them outright because they just get treated like dead weight, like a country too desperate to matter. He was born in Carderosa, a tiny kingdom with just 1,000 people living inside its walls. He's also the 3rd prince in this country. Sure, his older brothers are strong, but they're reckless, and everyone wonders if the throne could end up in his hands. Most people would grin at something like this, but because it's happening in this country, his smile dies on the spot. This land won't grow a thing. The soil's dead, and they've got 0 resources to fall back on too, because this country is tiny and brutally poor. A place so hopeless it feels like the world already gave up. Then he cut his losses and walked away. He always says something like that, like the prince were never an accident but done on purpose. The hero snapped that their soil was barren, so only a handful of crops could ever grow in it. He's determined to expand the sown fields as fast as humanly possible. The town's residents stared in shock as Hero showed up out of nowhere today, and they immediately burst into bragging mode, desperate to tell him everything they'd accomplished. They've been working the land since morning, sweeping everything smooth at first, but then trouble hit hard when that cursed tree started causing problems. The hero leaned in and demanded, "What kind of tree is this?" Then they marched him right up to a towering tree. Even 10 men couldn't handle him. If he swung an axe, you didn't stand a chance. It's probably been planted here for hundreds of years, and even Hero can't make himself lift a blade to cut it down. If they want that harvest, they've got to bring the whole thing down, cut it all now. In this world, magic is real, an incredible power that only awakens in members of a few chosen families. If you've got them, you'll crank up your physical power fast and see your body get stronger. He yanked his sword free and hacked the tree with one brutal swing. You drove your attack straight into the tree trunk. In the blink of an eye, it got sliced straight into 2 halves. The residents banded together, yanked the obstacle out of the way, and pushed through to keep cultivating this land. Right here today, the hero was pushed a plate of steamed potatoes, and even some of the workers didn't turn down the food. At this pace come summer, they'll have that whole field worked into shape, and once potatoes hit the soil, winter will roll around just in time for the harvest. Every single one of them is a genuinely good soul. Last winter, they were starving to death, but this time, Hero refuses to let hunger take anyone down again. They still need those fields, because right now, they're busy carving out and developing the land. They planted a potato crop from seed potatoes shipped from another country, and once these tough new spuds took root, even in barely fertile soil, this land was saved, almost completely. Still, it's a brutal price for them. The hero trudged down the hallway, utterly drained and barely holding it together. From sunrise to dusk, he barely had a second to breathe. Sword drills in the morning, power-hungry politics and ruling lessons in the afternoon, and in between, he threw himself into massive land development. Then the girl snapped his name and called him. It was his sister, someone he hadn't seen in ages. She couldn't stop smiling after she finally met him. Since she came to grab a forgotten thing, he launched an expedition instead. So she bolted and vanished. Her name is Miley Carderosa, the first princess of the kingdom of Carderosa. She threw herself in the path of danger and paid the ultimate price. At a grand reception, a prince from a wealthy nation locked eyes with her, swept her into marriage, and demanded one promise: he'd back their country with real help. Because of that, they didn't lose nearly as many people last year. And he can still remember every brutal struggle from those days like it happened yesterday. She's the one girl he ever truly loved, but he couldn't save her, so he ripped himself away and let her go. Her husband's totally distracted, and ugly rumors are swirling around him, while she's even thinner than she was when there was barely anything to eat back home. And he even clocked bruises on her wrist peeking out from under her sleeve. He couldn't stop hurting inside for his sister, so he said, "Let's at least grab dinner together," and she didn't put up a fight. After a bit, the table was finally set and ready to go. They set water out for her, then served soup brewed from leftover vegetables, potatoes boiled in salted water, with dried meat mixed in to finish it. And just like that, it turned out way better than anyone expected. Then Miley snapped back to something she'd heard. Lately, the hero had been buried in real work, and because of him, they were rushing to finish developing those very lands that were only supposed to be ready next year. He pushed himself to the limit, because there was nowhere to plant the potato she sent, so he refused to let her hard work go to waste. Then she gave him her thanks and praised him as the good kid he was. The hero snapped that he wasn't a child anymore, so stop calling him that. But Miley snapped that he was just a kid and begged him not to pull anything stupid. He swore it wasn't on purpose. "I didn't mean to," he said. He's not all-powerful. He still needs magic to help develop the lands, and that's exactly what his magical abilities let him do. Plus, his strength comes from being trained in swordsmanship by a dedicated instructor. If you zoom out and look at the whole country, his strength ends up feeling exactly like helplessness. He's determined to save his country but stuck as a regular office worker. He knows nothing, can't use any real skill, and every time he tries, disaster slams him again and again. Still, he can't help himself. Every single day, he throws caution to the wind and does whatever reckless thing he wants. Miley caught that he drifted into his own head, then snapped, "Don't stress. Your little sister will come up with something, no doubt." The hero asked her, "If I make this country rich, will you come back?" And she shook her head, even though the idea didn't turn her away. After she's done eating, she's out the door, because she's totally smitten with her charming hero. Later, she was already posted right by the cart, like she'd been there the whole time. Maybe she showed up today to beg that man for help, because it was those same things her sister paid for with her life. Rage surged through him as he slammed his fist into the windowsill. The hero doesn't just want strength, he's chasing it with everything he's got. If he keeps doing this, he'll get nothing. No wins with the sword, no progress in his studies, unless something extraordinary crashes into his life and changes everything. Because otherwise, this is where it all ends. He's ready to flip this whole situation around. So why isn't there any power out there that can match what he needs? Suddenly, a voice cut through the air, and it sounded like it was about to hand him the answers. A sudden, sharp pain stabbed his chest like lightning. This crushed his heart. Then he spun around, only to find absolutely nobody there. So I blurted, "Wait, who's even here?" The voice crashed back in again, declaring, "You're the respondent." Something was surging out of him, pain and searing heat colliding together, as a voice whispered that it had always been inside, guarding him, and now it was finally answering him when he begged with everything he had. It'll turn into his unstoppable superpower. In this world, some people are born with magical abilities, and if you're one of them, there's even a slim chance you'll unlock a special power: magic itself. A seething clump of magic that answers every question the owner dares to ask. And the thing that answers him is magic, obeying his every command. Later, the hero sank into his room, caught in the quiet after everything. The respondent lets you learn exactly what the magician sees, and the info keeps ramping up depending on how much magical power you pour in. Plus, You only get to use that trick once every 30 days. It was a super useful feature, but using it just once a month turned the whole thing into a headache. But Hiro still shoved his doubts aside and chose to do what this world demanded right now. He fired up his magic and pressed deeper, hunting answers. Then he leaned in and demanded to know how to make fertilizer, something he could produce himself, and pack as much power as humanly possible. The answer hit him instantly. He needed nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, and the rest of that nutrient lineup. That was awesome. Then Hiro leaned in and asked, "So where are the shops I can go to and grab all of this?" He confirmed the absolute max on his magic power, then decided, just this once, to spill the secret rank details. It usually takes a while to make fertilizer, but you're planning for the day the hero might need it in a hurry. Then he leaned in and told him to start studying alchemy right away. The moment he heard about chemistry, the hero was completely stunned. "Use alchemy," the respondent snapped, "and your work time gets cut in half. This spell banned by the church centuries ago has one purpose now: bidden magic." But the respondent already knows the exact method, and with alchemy, they can make all of this happen. Do this, and he'll save this country and more. But even when you zoom out to the entire world, and it all kicks off because the church bans alchemy, but he doesn't flinch at all, even with the bans closing in. If you want to crack alchemy, you've got to trek about 24 kilometers to the southeast. Then the respondent shoved the coordinates straight into Hiro's brain. The legend of alchemist Chronal Kaisar's legacy is out there, and you'd better take it for yourself. That same night, Hiro tore off on his journey, ready for whatever fate threw at him. In the roaring storm, he bashed through the rock and carved out a hole, and he climbed in, only to uncover a hidden cave waiting inside. This was the spot the respondent had pointed out, cold as ice with no fresh air anywhere around. But he still refused to use magic to boost his strength, because he had no clue how much farther he'd have to go. As he pushed deeper into the cave, it suddenly opened into a new passage. Right there, a clear path cut forward into the dark, and right ahead of him loomed a gigantic door, impossible to ignore. It looked like a full-on puzzle. Nothing about it felt natural at all. But luckily, Hiro was a total puzzle master. You cracked the puzzle open right there on the door, piece by piece. When he finished, the puzzle snapped into a button, and he slammed it. The door creaked open, slow at first, like it was teasing what was about to happen. Warm air hugged the inside, and in the distance, you could clearly make out another room. Once Hiro slipped into the room, he froze, because the view was nothing short of breathtaking. At last, the right person has surfaced to take over Chronal's alchemy. For 160 years and 32 days, he waited, patient as death, hungry for this moment. The hero leaned in and demanded, "So you're Colonel Kaiser, the legendary alchemist?" Yeah, it was true, but not the whole truth, because this wasn't some master at all. It was a golem stuffed with recorded memories, just waiting here for his successor. Alchemy could do it too, and when Hiro realized it, he understood the church would call all of this desecration. Suddenly the golem snapped that he was out of time. His body was only temporary, and in just 5 days the magic holding him in this world would finally die out. If that was true, then every single second was life or death. So Hiro refused to hesitate, and before he could even catch his breath, she blurted out, "Teach me alchemy." The golem was thrilled he hadn't dragged it out. He was about to hammer alchemy into him in just 5 days. Hiro even caught himself smiling. He's down to scraps of water and almost no food, but somehow he's still pushing through, training for the next 5 days straight with zero rest or sleep, and magic is keeping him fueled and whole. Here's the real problem. He's not going to stay in the castle for the next few days. Golem told him that in these 5 days he'd only be laying the foundation, and after that, he'd have to tear into the materials and study for real. After he masters the basics and gets the core concepts down, Hiro will finally be able to study on his own like a pro. Then the golem leaned in and demanded the kid's name. Hiro Carter Rosa, yeah, that's his name. When the golem heard his last name, it froze. Then memory sparked, and it realized its lineage, and those eyes matched someone it knew. So I shook it off and dove straight into the lesson, starting as fast as I possibly could. He's over the moon and blurts out, teacher. Nobody's called him that in ages. And after 5 grueling days, he finally crushed his training and finished strong. Colonel leaned in and demanded to know whether the foundation of alchemy was truly perfect. You said, yeah. Alchemy kicks in when you pour magical power through different waves into this special blue gemstone. Unlike other kinds of magic, alchemy is basically programming in disguise. Follow the rules, pump magical power through the code in perfect waves and the blue gemstone. That's the compiler. To cast magic or write code, you've got to know functions, pointers, arrays, and parameters. Then, once the seal locations are nailed down, you mix the connections between magical powers like a volatile recipe. And when these elements get fused and forged together, they birth something real, matter, body, even a soul, powered by rational magic. And when you zoom out and add it all up, it leads to something like this. The colonel was relieved he got to teach him the basics, because if anyone else had shown up, they wouldn't have stood a chance. By sheer luck, Hiro knew programming, because if he hadn't, it would have taken him days just to even grasp the basics. But Colonel swore that across all magic, nothing else even comes close to alchemy, because it's the most logical, the most stunning magic of them all. Now he's finally calm, and the moment to leave is here. He named him his successor, and handed over all the hard-earned wisdom he'd collected over the years. He threw Hiro a deep thanks, and then prayed he'd get even more of this knowledge in his hands, and let him pass it on to the next generation. Enro bowed and thanked his teacher. Trust me, he's going to do it, no doubt about it. He drilled the basics until they clicked. Then he fully grasped the whole concept and the core idea. Later, he'd pore over the clues Chronal Kaiser left behind, those rare materials from the legendary alchemist himself. He uncovered alchemy, the forbidden power that vanished from this world, and once he's got it, he can rewrite everything. 2 years have slammed by since Hiro first threw himself into alchemy. Alchemy's basically a rule of the universe. Everything has to be made from something, so you can tweak what you've got, but you'll never just turn stone into gold. So if you tap into this handy magic, you can rake in a fortune, maybe even get rich, depending on the plan. But if you're only thinking about yourself, then he should bail out of this kingdom and carve out a new life anywhere he can. But he refuses, because his heart is locked onto his kingdom, and he'd never turn his back on it. Even if this is the only power he's got, he'll still storm in and save the kingdom. He'll pull his sister back from the dead. He's poured everything into his studies, and now, at last, he's about to start moving. He's going to do it no matter what. If he has to go solo, he'll go solo. At least that's what he believed for now. A girl ran up to him and shouted, "Crybaby Hiro," like it was the best insult and the biggest compliment. The hero snapped to attention the moment he recognized her as Hibana. Hibana Clurford is his granddaughter. She races to the Kinnar Principality to train in swordsmanship, and she's also the hero's childhood friend. Once her studies wrapped up, she sprinted back home. Hiro stepped up and told Hibana to cut it out with Crybaby, because he's changed for real. Hibana flashed a sly smirk at the request. He said she was already 14, and had the skills to jump into the Bronze Knightly Order of the Principality of Kinnar. This was that ruthless knightly order only a top-tier swordsman could earn a seat in. Even though it was the lowest bronze rank, it still looked downright incredible. Then Hiro demanded, "Why come back now, when you could join the Bronze Knight Order at your age?" And he pushed even harder. "With your talent, you'd get into the Golden Knight Order too. Isn't that the greatest honor a swordsman can ask for?" Hearing it all, Hibana puffed out her cheeks and pouted at Hiro. And she told him she came back only because of their communication. So if he suddenly claims he forgot about him, she's going to hit him. The two of them sprawled in a sea of flowers, letting the colors drown out everything else. She wrapped her arms around the hero, who was sobbing, because Mealy was getting married. Then she begged him to smile, or they'd be kicked out and sent home. But what he saw shattered him. She was crying too. And yeah, she loves Mealy too. She can't stand the thought of seeing her fall apart like that. The hero then swore, "I'll reshape this kingdom. I can't do it yet, but when the time comes, I'll change everything." And once it was clear that was the deal, Hibana didn't hesitate. She chose to become his sword. They sealed a promise together, right then and there. She froze in shock. How could she still remember this? Of course it was. This was exactly how it had to go. She really wanted to blurt it out, but once she came back to this kingdom, she still couldn't figure out who she really was. As she got older, she couldn't stop believing this country was beyond saving. Until one day she stepped outside and realized the kingdom of Karosa was downright dangerous, with every decision looking shady. The thought of him throwing in the towel terrified her to the core, and she figured, why not join the Golden Knightly Order? That sounded like a smart plan. But Hiro still pressed and demanded to know how much she was here for. From her grandfather's letter, she finally realized the truth. Hiro wasn't just a legend. He could actually save the entire kingdom, because he refused to quit, and he's still chasing his dream, pushing forward no matter what. That's why she came rushing back, determined to find out if he'd truly abandoned his dream, or if he was still fighting for it. Hiro froze in shock and stared at Hisa, who grinned right back at him. He could feel the hero about to strike, so he sent a message to Habana right away, and he nailed it every time. Infancy had always watched his back, and he could never keep a single secret hidden from him. Back then, as a kid, he just couldn't stop crying. Tears kept spilling non-stop. He and Hibana burst into laughter at that. The heroes got Hisa by his side, and just like that, Hibana's back with a bang. This is the perfect moment, right now. Then Hibana demanded they hold up and wait, and she demanded to know how he planned to rescue that good-for-nothing kingdom. She couldn't stop herself. She was totally locked in and itching to know more. So, does he really have the kind of power it takes to pull off everything he's been plotting? Besides, she loves this country too, so she's fighting to save every last bit of it and keep their promise. But if that dream is unreachable, then they've got one choice left: walk away and let it go. Then the hero hit them with a wild idea and decided to show them something they'd never forget. He grabbed the group and marched them straight into the basement. Then he hauled them into a massive hall, towering library shelves everywhere, plus a whole work area ready to go. His and Hibana froze in total disbelief. They had no clue this castle even hid a basement like that. Hiro himself had built it. Hibana's eyes went wide when she realized Hiro had built all of this. They shoved both this room and that passage into the same room. Building a stone wall and wiring it for electricity would take one person decades of sheer, relentless work. He agreed. There was just no way they could have built something like that, not with the carpenters' limited skills in their kingdom. The hero says, "Magic makes it possible. Your puny human strength can't pull it off." He'd kept thinking about what he was up to, but he couldn't even imagine that he would prepare something like this. But they were stunned, because what Hiro wanted to show them hadn't even happened yet. It was still waiting up ahead, and then he couldn't hold it in anymore. He finally unveiled the results of his 2 years of desperate training and relentless research. This invention is about to flip Carterosa on its head and shake the whole small kingdom to its core. He swung the door open, and right in front of them was a wild sea of lush vegetation. Inside the walls, wheat somehow grew, almost unheard of in the kingdom, because their ancestors had tried and every single attempt had failed. It's a brutal testing ground where he cooks up ideas, experiments non-stop, and builds the tools that could save their country. One thing everyone overlooked was the wheat. Through ruthless selection, it supercharged its vitality. Now it can thrive in freezing cold, fight off disease way more easily, and has boosted its growth rate like crazy. You can plant them in spring or early summer, and they'll shoot up with unreal speed. And it tastes amazing, packed with sugar. So if you bake bread with it, that dough turns fluffy, soft, and sweet. Hibana's eyes lit up. She just had to ask, what if I plant it on the ground? Would it really grow the same way? Nope, doesn't matter how incredible that wheat is. If the soil has no real nutrients, it just won't sprout. And I decided to dig in and figure out exactly what fertilizer they're feeding this soil. Then he shoved the monster's corpse into view, sprawled right there among the wheat. Monsters are laying waste to their country. Turns out their bodies are packed with miasma, so they're useless to eat and they poison the world around them, he said. That's why the hero snapped into action and planted the seed. He shoved a seed into a dead body, and a fresh sprout suddenly burst right out of it. Then those buds will pop open and sprout right up, blasting away miasmas as the body starts swallowing those nutrients and assimilating them. Then the body starts to shrivel up, drying out and sinking back into the soil. And this soil turns insanely fertile, because the monster's body is packed with raw power. I couldn't even process what I was seeing. It was so insane it blew my mind. That wheat will finally take root and grow strong in this country. This kingdom's land can do a whole lot. So much, it might even grow enough food to start feeding massive countries. Okay, this is seriously fascinating. Like, I can't stop watching. But this is only the start. Once he unleashes his power, he can flip the whole world. Back when he made that promise, he was just a helpless kid. But now the tables have turned, and he finally has the power to make his dream come true. And he urged her to stick to the promise they'd both sworn to keep. Hibana lit up and happily agreed. With his power, this kingdom is about to be reborn, and she grabs his hand to show him, right from a secret vantage point, and she swore she'd become his blade. He shot him a glare, then whipped around toward the hero. He asked again. After all, it was him who built this basement and raised that wheat. The hero didn't just hint at it. He flat out confirmed it. He demanded to know whether all of this was pulled off with help from something the church had outlawed centuries ago. Still, the hero made it clear nothing was going to slip past him. He then proved it. Yeah, he really did use alchemy. If word gets out, the church won't just stand there. It'll strike back fast. But the hero leaned in and told him, "Don't sweat it, I've got this," and promised he'd handle everything the right way. At this point, it's done. He's already picked every move and locked it in. He knows it's forbidden. Still, if there's even a shot to save the kingdom, he's taking it. The church's power means nothing to him. He'll throw himself into battle to protect his beloved cause. His and Hibana stared at him, shocked out of their wits. Eros' gaze was absolutely relentless, like nothing could stop him. Then he made up his mind. He'd help him no matter what, and pleaded with him to let me step in and support him. Suddenly, Hibana lunged in and clamped her grip on him. She yanked him back and snapped, "Stop, your hands are always on a hero and it's not okay." Since he's an alchemist, she's refusing to budge. Her mind isn't changing, and if anyone dares mess with him over this, she'll end them without hesitation. Then he started counting on them, like they were the only hope he had. Hibana stepped forward as a knight and told the hero, "Can you start my ignition right now?" Heath then blurted out that becoming a knight requires a proper initiation ceremony, and she can't be someone's personal knight if they're from the royal family. She can't believe this rule. She thinks it's utterly stupid. The royal family has to kick off the knight, run the whole ceremony, and hand over the sword they forged themselves, because getting initiated into the knight is sacred tradition, and nothing, not a single detail, can be left out. He didn't mind throwing a ceremony just to make it crystal clear she was his knight, because she'd become his secret accomplice, and he needed her close so she could move freely. Hibana said to grab some cheap sword for the job, but Hero refused, because she wanted to protect him with it, not watch him risk himself with junk. Then she grinned and teased, asking if he could forge her a sword with alchemy. But Hero was already one step ahead, plotting every move before anything even started. He's forging a sword strong enough to eclipse even the sacred blade of the Principality of Kennar. In the Principality of Kennar, he set his sights sky-high, because only 12 knights of the Golden Order are even allowed to wield sacred swords. If they can't pull this off, then their kingdom's future stays locked. No wealth, no growth, no escape. Hero demanded Hibana hand over his sword. Use it as your starting point, and for real, go with a sword that's been sharpened by time, has a solid center of gravity, and gives you that long, reeky blade you can swing with confidence. This sword is carved from an iron-based alloy, forged and polished so perfectly that you can't help but wonder how many decades of blacksmith training it took him to make something this unreal. It honestly feels a bit unfair that he can whip out magic for something like this. And then he leaned in and asked Hibana straight up, did she have any requirements for the sword? Her style screams speed over raw weight. She wants to slash, not smash. So the blade should be light where she needs to stay locked in, trimmed just a bit shorter, and nudged lower in the center of gravity to keep every move sharp. Hero's eyes widened. Turns out there were way more demands than he ever imagined. But still, he nodded and pulled the thing straight out of his pocket. He struck a pose and started charging up his spell, ready to unleash it at any second. He focused on these two subjects. Magic surged to life and swirled around the tiny object. In his second hand, a second sword snapped into existence. He looked exactly like Hibana's sword, same sharp energy, same deadly shine. That's how he wears the bracelet. And get this, the sword is forged from mithril, the legendary metal material. This is what alchemy looks like, pure power in motion. Hibana planted herself before the knight statue and swung at him like she meant it. And she swung her sword and nailed him right in the chest. The statue exploded into two brutal pieces the second it hit the ground. Hibana's eyes went wide. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. She didn't feel a thing, even when she swung the blade and carved the statue. Hiro couldn't believe it. Without any magical body strengthening, she sliced the statue straight down the middle. Hibana was done playing around. She wanted to reveal her real, terrifying strength to him. Just like you'd expect from her look, she's clearly mastered how to control magical power. She just hasn't unleashed it yet. Then she spun around and faced the hero head-on. She asked to take the mithril sword, but the hero snapped a hard no straight away, because that blade is his, and he only handed it to her for the moment. But he leaned in and told her, "Don't you get too upset." And he swore he'd forge her a blade far better than that crazy experimental one. He was determined to pull it off with every last piece of material he'd already stockpiled. She just couldn't sit still anymore. She had to have it now. She's so desperate for that sword that you can't afford to let her down. And Hiro fired up the forge, crafting a sword for Hibana. The sword is made from special materials. He won't touch mithril unless he's forging something insanely strong, because when he's building power, he chooses the right stuff. And trust me, those aren't metals at all. The monster fangs and skins he used as fertilizer came packed with weird metal-like properties. Tough, gummy, and nearly impossible to break. Right as they enchant their swords, the monsters start hexing their weapons too, like their magic is tied together by a single invisible lifeline. That magic sword, forged from a monster's body, hits like a wrecking ball, but its cruel curse sinks into the bearer's soul. But some magic sword wielders are so strong they can actually lift one. And when someone's choked by miasma, alchemy's whole point is cutting it out and clearing it for good. The miasma started swirling together, tightening into a single dark ball. She snapped herself together and shot up inside the ball. This crystal ball was forged as an alchemical weapon to wipe out miasma. Then he stuffed it full to the brim, sealed it away, and left it for the future. Then the monster's material, now free from miasma, is smashed into shards with a hammer he forged with his own hands, then melted down. If you try ordinary forging, you'll need a massive furnace and special chemicals. Right now he's got 3 monster types in rotation: Big Bear, a hunting dog, and the Golden Eagle. They're terrifying monsters, and you've got to melt every single piece, mix them together, and forge one unified force, because the right combination supercharges their synergy. The way to forge a blade by combining monsters was laid on him by the respondent, and he swaggered like, "I can craft a sword that matches the sacred Kinar blade." Plus, he already had 2 years worth of knowledge he'd gathered from that same respondent. Next, Hibana asked for magic to forge the sword's shape, its perfect center of gravity, the blade's length, the exact look, and all the little details that make it deadly. He built it with his own hands, and it came out breathtaking, so unreal that something this beautiful could ever end up being used to kill. Now you've got one last move. Etch cutting runes into the blade to crank the sword's power sky high, then slam the enchantment onto it. This is real alchemy. Magic bleeds into the material, and it supercharges everything at the core. With enchantment pumping through the blade, the enchanted base cut went wild. Power surged into its core, making the sword stronger and tougher at the very foundation. Turns out, yeah, it was absolutely epic. Hibana's about to be absolutely thrilled. Hibana Clurford finally got knighted. She vowed with her whole heart her sword would belong to Prince Hiro. She leaned in and whispered her gratitude, thanking the hero for forging her the best sword, because she'd never laid eyes on anything so breathtaking or so unshakably strong. But she didn't look happy at all, so he leaned in and asked, "Do you not like it?" She admitted it wasn't arrogance at all. She was just nervous, terrified of what people would say if she bombed. But the hero said Hibana can't possibly fail. Honestly, nobody's gonna care. Doesn't the third prince already have a knight in his service? But Hibana is Hisa's granddaughter. She trained in the Principality of Kinnar. And that means you've got zero reason to complain about her as a knight. Yeah, everyone in here just witnessed Hibana's real power, and I want her to serve me. And trust me, there are people here who feel the exact same way. But yeah, for them, that hope doesn't stand a chance. Hibana's got his back together. They made one promise and sealed it. She's his partner, and the strength that powers him. And finally, he snaps into action. He's ready to move. He's got a mile-long list of missions he has to tackle with his comrades, but 2 more players are still itching to take the stage. Hibana thanked Hiro for saving her at night, then swore she'd protect his sword with her life. But she still had something tucked away for him, something meant just for him. It blindsided him. Then she grabbed the toy sheep and shoved it into his hands. She claimed it was his respondent, but it looked way more like a fancy accessory than anything official. When he hits the responder, it looks like he's talking to himself. And that hits her right in the chest, so she starts wondering, what if he passed the responder to someone else? Then she grabbed the toy, acted just like him and shouted, "Hello, hero." He said he'd sit there and decide, really think it over, before he used it. I asked her what she was up to, and she told me straight up she was training. What caught his attention was that she was doing all of this right here, in the same room with him. She said there was nothing left to do. Because she was his knight, she had to stay right by his side. Becoming someone's sword isn't about being pretty. It's about getting stronger than everyone else. And if she can't, then she's nothing but a liar. She already knows 8 more fighters out there stronger than her. And she's got to catch up fast. Because every single free minute she has gets poured into training. Turns out she's so confident she claims she's stronger than 4 knights from the 12 Golden Order of the Principality of Kinnar. Yet for Hiro, that was enough, because she was standing right there with him. No matter how hard they saved, they'd never snag the Bronze Knights. But honestly, thank goodness he had Hibana. He leaned in and asked her how that sword felt in her hands. If she lit up with joy, it meant that sword was insanely powerful. You can slice down an enemy with a plain blade only if they're not swinging a sacred or magic sword. And you can even shrug off someone in simple armor because she's his knight. So she's got to rely on a sword. And he was certain she could take him on. No fear, no doubt. And maybe she'll get a practice today. Enro leaned in and told her, "Get ready, we're leaving." They were minutes away from bursting out of the castle. Suddenly, a guy burst into view in the doorway, who dared to ask Hiro where he was headed. Agatha's brother wasn't just anyone. Carderosa's own second prince, Carderosa. Agatha watched the hero, always chasing applause from the crowd. And with his prince's brain, he kept making new discoveries, hiding who he really was by playing the town doctor in plain sight. And he snapped, "So what happens next time?" Because rumors were flying everywhere. After he tried to hand out the wheat, he rushed in to see exactly what the hero was up to. The hero has to stay on guard, because there's no slipping away from what's coming for him. He made it clear he wasn't chasing fame at all. He just wanted this kingdom to grow rich. But Agatha was convinced Hiro was just trying to wipe out him and his brother Takuma, then seize the throne as king. The hero kept shouting that he wasn't going to do it, no matter what. If people truly know different fields, then for politics, he doesn't fit the bill for Agatha's arrival, because honestly, Agatha herself is the perfect choice to sit on the throne. Depending on what they're up against, they need a real powerhouse king. And Takumu's older brother is brave and sharp as a strategist, but he can't be that with incomplete talent. Agatha trusted Hiro with her whole heart, because in this kingdom, Mealy and Hiro are the glue holding everything together. He even figured brother Agatha would say something just like that. Then he snapped that the hero was trying to jump over him and act like he wasn't doing what he was doing now. But it wasn't going to work. Hiro snapped at him to quit the nonsense and get to the point, because Agatha couldn't go to his despised younger brother alone. Agatha shot back that he still wasn't cute. Brother Tsukumo grabbed me by the moment and told me to deliver this to you. Hiro's about to hit 14, and the moment he turns older, he's drafted to serve the imperial family, training up, preparing his gear and fighting monsters on their orders. Then Agatha clocked it. Hiro picked a single knight for himself, and she couldn't help thinking he should have grabbed an entire squad instead. Enro leaned in and asked, "Are you worried about me?" He shot back, "No," right away. And the thought of being stuck caring for him made his stomach twist with dread. Hiro told him, "Don't worry, I've got this." Even if he wasn't quite as strong as Takumu's brother, he didn't change a bit. Then Agatha clocked it instantly. The girl practically oozed bloodlust, and she didn't even bother to hide it. He stepped right up to her and asked, "Want to come with me?" Hibana's eyes went wide. She couldn't believe the proposal she just heard. And suddenly, Hiro understood exactly why he'd come here. Brother needs a knight like Hibana. She's already climbed up to bronze rank. Agatha swore she'd hand Hiro a weapon, so much stronger than anything he'd ever seen. Hibana shot it down on the spot, because the idea would have been painfully dull, and she's already vowed to take up the hero's sword. Agatha felt a strange twinge of sympathy, like an odd man spots another odd man from a mile away. So he spun around to leave, then it hit him. He remembered something, and he told Hiro, "If you need me at any moment in your plan, just call." This is the real reason he came here in the first place. If Takumi becomes king, then it all ends. So they have to unite and make it happen. He's probably already eyeing Hiro, wanting to climb above Takumu's brother and seize the next shot at the throne. But only he can truly use Hiro's inventions. He can build the stuff, sure, but he still needs Agate's power to make it work. That deal was absolutely insane, too good to ignore, but he said he'd think it over, until Agatha suddenly stepped in and insisted on helping him, making his support exactly what was needed. After that, Agatha leaned in and waited, heart pounding, for his answer to finally come. Hibana's fury burned so hot it felt like it could light the sky. He tossed out the invitation so lightly, she couldn't possibly read what he was really feeling. Agatha's sincerity hit so hard that the hero couldn't deny it. He even laid out enough common sense to make it sound like the truth. But Hibana still stared him down and called him a liar anyway. Still, he'd always dragged the hero through the mud. So between the brothers, that gap kept widening. They don't even know if he's really their blood relative. One day, out of nowhere, his father yanked him into the open and dropped the bombshell that the hero was his son. The brothers are already fuming. Some mystery kid with no known past is suddenly standing there like he owns the throne. Bana suddenly snapped back to what he'd said just recently. She fired off the question again, insisting that Hiro absolutely doesn't want to become king. Yeah, it was true. Being a prince fit him perfectly, because now he could do whatever he wanted. If he takes the throne, alchemy will be the first thing he drops, and you bet he'll throw all the blame on his brothers. But Hibana was convinced he was about to seize the crown and rule as king. She's got razor-sharp intuition, and of course she wants to become the king's knight. But then they made the call. Today they'd need her strength, and she couldn't stop herself from feeling proud of it. After what felt like forever, they finally crashed into the forest, or even more precisely, the Devil's Forest. Here, she can absolutely tear into even the toughest monsters. Hibin was over the moon, because all those simple lessons didn't just stop there. They actually transformed her. Those are huge words for a place this deadly. Devil's Forest, where evil monsters breed, roam, and unleash colossal damage on the land. Even after you slay the monster, the corpse is useless forever. So they're forced to dump it in the forest, and that pile of lost causes becomes a crushing burden on the kingdom of Carderosa. Hibana shot back, asking if they were really sure that outfit could survive a stealth mission. But Hiro claimed he forged those clothes with alchemy himself. He yanked the thread from an insect monster and enchanted it the same way she did with her sword. These threads are brutally well protected, hard as steel. So Hibana leans in and decides to punch straight through Hiro with a knife. And she truly didn't slice him. Hiro demanded to know why she wouldn't trust him at all. If it was just a near hit, he would have been dead by now. But she declared, dead serious, whoever lies at a life-or-death moment deserves death. In any case, he's not dead, so what's the real problem? She demanded. She learned it in the Principality of Kinnar, because there, only the strong survive. Then it hit him. If she was really his to command, he'd have to smash her bad habits one by one, and that wasn't going to be easy at all. Hibana blurts out that the hero is her childhood friend, and talking to him is always effortless. And yeah, even a little joy lit up his face when he heard it. Hibana shot the question and demanded to know why they'd come here. He realized he hadn't said a word yet, then chose 2 reasons and brought them up. First, he refuses to trust rumors. He wants to see the resources with his own eyes. She demanded, seriously, do ore deposits really exist in this forest? Maybe, but he's not satisfied. He has to find out what monsters are lurking here. At the end of the day, monsters aren't just threats. They're resources too. I used the monster like fertilizer and I didn't stop there. Those clothes they wear. Monster made. Even Hibana's sword, forged from monsters. With alchemy, he summons monsters. And those monsters are the only treasure his whole kingdom has. She nodded, leaned in, and asked if he really wanted to know what monsters were lurking here, and what they can do. He nodded, and that choice meant one thing. They'd plunge even deeper into the forest. Then she told Hibana, if you get spooked out of nowhere, just back off, stay calm and run. Because every monster they'd faced so far was puny, crushed after they lost the fight for territory. And nothing even compares to the monsters lurking deeper in the forest, waiting and far stronger. She said she couldn't run away. Her blood was boiling, and she'd finally get to test her baby in action. Hearing from her felt like a wave of relief crashing into my chest. They beat the barricades to the punch, and that means terrifying monsters are waiting just ahead. Hibana snapped his memory back and demanded to know the second reason. He said that every single thing they do to save this kingdom matters. Nothing is small, not one bit. Hibana couldn't make sense of what he was saying. Suddenly, guards stormed up and demanded to know what Prince Hero was doing there, ordering him to leave at once because this place was deadly. He flashed a grin, told them not to worry, and asked, "Do you know my sword?" And he added, "My knight's stronger than I am, so don't worry, there won't be a single problem." And he demanded they let them through, because this was a matter too important to stall. They actually listened to him but warned him, "Don't go too far with it, okay?" And they told him to be way more careful. Suddenly, that sharp clank of armor echoed from far off, like someone was charging straight toward them. They still had to find a time to talk. He definitely wouldn't want to cross paths with him this early. The guards yanked the gates open, and there beyond them stood a single man backed by an entire army. He made it back safe, sound, and unbroken. It was Takumu Carderosa, the first prince of the Carderosa kingdom. Takumu had no idea he'd run into Hiro right here. He sure didn't see that coming, and he blurted out, "Wait, are we really going to kill monsters?" He told them, "This isn't a place you stroll into. This is a battlefield, and if you're not ready, you're done." So yeah, he can't go back because he showed up already locked in, fully ready for this. Takumu said he'd do whatever he wanted, but he also told him point blank he wasn't helping, because the only thing that mattered was staying alive and not dying. And if she's here, then he's not dying. No way, not today. Hiro leaned back and said his night was absolutely incredible. Then Takumu blurted out that he already knew the hero and Agatha were duking it out. He found out way faster than anyone expected. Turns out only a few hours had gone by. Turns out it was Agatha who came out and said she'd been working with him, using that plan to pull Takuma's focus off what mattered. Takumu snapped at him, "Don't waste a thing. This kingdom won't get rich until the right moment hits." The hero snapped to the truth right away. Once the neighboring country struck, they wouldn't stop until they were finished. Right now, they're not getting hauled in, because the kingdom's got nothing worth taking. They had a rich, packed kingdom, until a neighboring country swooped in and crushed it. So now the last surviving territory sits right beside the Devil's Forest. If there's anything valuable out here, those militant neighbors will come swooping in and snatch it up for themselves. The hero told his brother, "Right on time, I'll snatch back the captured lands." But then he grimly admitted the truth. Our armies don't match, and even if he wins the ground, they won't be able to hold it. Takuma's brother is coming for the land that feeds the kingdom, and he wants it back. No questions asked. If those lands come back, food pours in, the population explodes, and most of the kingdom's problems get wiped clean. Once the land gets reclaimed, the backlash comes hard, because you can't beat a country with double the population in a straight-up, head-on war. But Takumu probably has a card up his sleeve that can swing things fast, so this doesn't look like a totally doomed play. Now he's stacking power in his bones, and when the moment hits, he'll unleash his plan for real, unless they pull off something extra. But if that enemy cracks the plan early and strikes before he can choose, it's game over. This is your warning. If they step in his way, he won't care that they're his own brothers. Only he can save the kingdom. Then it's their turn to face Agate's mess, and after that, he won't be able to help at all. Those guys are pure brain power, then instantly weird in the most unpredictable way. But the kingdom needs them. No shortcuts, no exceptions. At first, everyone felt the tension in the air, but after a bit, they finally started drifting away. The hero let out a shaky breath and pushed farther into the distance. This is a warning. If he keeps doing this, he's going to die, and yet he won't let go of his hands. Yeah, the idea that the only way to make a kingdom rich is to win a war is, honestly, spot on. Brother Agata already knows what Brother Takumu's about to pull off, so he stays on high alert, because beating the neighboring countries seems like a long shot, and this streak of wins can't last. He gets it, and if he hands it all to Takuma, they're going to get wiped out. So he never stepped in to help the person he despised, even if that choice meant he'd be the one stopping him. Agatha and Takumu are about to save the kingdom, but they're taking totally different routes. He's set on becoming a vassal to a powerful nation so it can shield them from the countries next door, while Agatha's convinced that whatever's blocking the way, and that it's Takumu himself, is something she just can't fix. It's wild. Two brothers are clashing head to head, and each one is determined to save the kingdom in their own way, even though what they want lines up perfectly. Then he realized Hibana had gone strangely quiet. She clocked him in an instant, power radiating off him. But it hit even harder the moment he stepped onto the battlefield with weapons in hand. Hiro understood her instantly, because after all, he was the strongest man in the whole kingdom. Maybe, just maybe, he could even take down a Golden Order knight if their weapons matched. The hero demanded, "Is it really that strong?" And even then, he knew it couldn't possibly be that strong. If he really plans to kill Hiro, Hibana will have to step up. So she demanded to know if she could actually beat him. She told him, "I'll give you 3 minutes, then I'm coming back," and made it sound like a deadline with teeth. The hero finally got the full picture, so he knew they'd steer clear of a violent blow-up with his brother. If a collision hits, she'll buy him seconds to sprint away. It felt like a deadly warning, like fate was flashing. If conflict comes, this is how you'll go. And he would have grabbed any way out to dodge the fight. He'll have to call on Brother Agatha to spread his inventions, and once the word spreads, Brother Takumu and his army step in, turning the whole kingdom into a gold mine. He's determined to arm his brother's forces with brutal, alchemy-forged weapons, and I want to march back and reclaim those captured lands. With that military might, they can seize the lands back and hold them tight. Takumu's power is exactly what he's craving, and he wants it along with his army. His brothers are amazing, bold, stubborn, and tough to get through to. Hibana saw that the sun's rays could barely reach this place. Then finally, they tore into the search and hunted monsters down. When Takuma's brother showed up, they got cut off mid-conversation, and she snapped back at him, reminding him of the second reason he'd been trying to say. Hiro remembered it, and still went ahead, telling the second reason for this trip anyway. Second reason, it's the salt. Hibana's jaw dropped the moment she heard the talk about salt. She leaned in and asked him if he meant the salt hiding in the Devil's Forest, right down in the rocky, haunted mine. But Hiro snapped back, "Yeah, on the Great Alchemist's map. There's a big sea sitting behind the forest he spotted." Ivano froze in shock the moment she heard the word sea. If her map is right, then this is a gold mine. Neighboring kingdoms can stock up on all the salt they want, because it's only rock salt here, and that means they'll open up a brand new market too. Everything checks out, so they don't waste time doubting whether the sea exists. They're locked in on the truth that it's right there, and the real mission: building a safe road, because this matters more than anything. This forest isn't just crawling with deadly monsters. Those roads will wreck you too. And it's so dangerous even regular soldiers have to fight just to survive. So he built a compass to keep his way. He slots a magic arrow into the compass, and plans to merge the search with testing this very device. It figures out where it is because those two stones line up, pointing in the exact same direction. He's relieved. He confirmed the regular compass is useless. Then Hibana stays icy calm, shutting the door on every trouble she doesn't want to face. She laughed it off and admitted she was terrified of monsters. Right when they finally remembered that monster, she snapped to it, because she heard something go bump in the night. She finally clocked it after everything. This was a once-in-a-lifetime shot. Hiro told Hibana to watch his fight and stay out of it, and even though she was his protector, Hibana nodded, because she needed to learn what he could really do. He kicked off the Mithril's transformation. The Mithril got forged into a lethal bow. Then he started transforming gunpowder right on the spot, and then he forged the explosive arrow, Red Lotus. He powered through the fifth form transformation and forged a magic bow that would change everything. He pulled off a wild surprise, crafting a bow out of mithril and an arrow from gunpowder. He dove straight into analysis, and then, like magic, what he saw shimmered in his own right eye. This spell sharpens your vision with a surge of insight, pour in magic, and you'll gain the power to predict what a creature will do and even see through its secrets. He studies the monster's muscle structure and center of gravity, then zeroes in on the next movements. Then he whipped in a burst of wind. He loosed an explosive arrow from his bow and tore straight into the chaos. The monster already had him in its grip. Claws dug in as it leapt onto him, but the arrow still slammed straight into his head. And just a second later, the monster exploded in a blinding burst of chaos. Ebina realized the hero already knew where the monster would leap, and then he blew it to pieces right on the spot. He shut the magic down with a snap, and in a single strike it slammed back, turning against the gunpowder with explosive power. That monster was stubborn beyond belief, and without this move, they'd have zero chance to win. Suddenly, the hero froze as more rustling sounds crawled in from behind him. Then he snapped the bow into its second form, turning it into a blazing magic spear. She was stunned. How was the hero not even a swordsman? He claimed he was an alchemist, and once he cooked something up, he could wield it all. For long range, bow down. When it's medium range, grab the spear. It's all about getting in their face. Close range sword first, then a quick knife and shield if they crowd him, and for a heavy hit, he swings a hammer. It was a weapon that wore 1,000 faces, one for every nightmare. Mithril's jaw-dropping magic transformation. It felt cool, but Hibana immediately decided that using a weapon that could change things crossed the line, like straight up breaking the rules. But if he's stuck with just one kind of weapon, he'll get boxed in by your sword and turn into dead weight. So Hibana shoved him aside. She stood her ground, right in front of the bear monster, staring it down. Then she swings her sword and cleaves off his paw like it was nothing. Then she slashed her sword straight at the bear's leg, and she launched into another sprint straight at him and sliced his head clean off. That you could slice off his limbs with a single strike. He and Hiro didn't just disagree. They lived by totally different values. And honestly, it's still pretty damn good. He barely got a breath in, because her dazzling sword technique was already sweeping in, and he demanded to know whether everyone in the Principality of Kinar was a monster, just like her. She reminded him they had 8 more people coming, stronger than her by a mile, and still they're a danger closing in on them. She demanded, "Why do you think that?" Even though they weren't even fighting or at odds in the first place. Right now, today's kingdom of Katarosa means nothing to them, but the second he upgrades it, everything changes. They can wipe Katarosa out while it's weak and steal every one of his inventions. So yeah, strengthening the kingdom matters just as much as filling it with greatness, meaning he's going after that landmark. A kingdom so unstoppable it could wipe out the Principality of Kinar. If they can climb to that level, there's nobody in the world they can't beat. Like any prince worth his crown, he can't help but dwell on it. And she asked if we could hand over these claws for them, because trust me, they're razor sharp. On this rare occasion, he shows up with a special miasma bag, ready to unleash something sinister. Had he not stepped in, the miasma would have wiped them out. So Hibana leaned in and asked if they needed treatment. Hiro said to do it, we'll need magic. Then straight up decided to save every drop for what the forest truly needs. So yeah, he's not doing it. In the end, she casually hoisted 30 kilograms like it was nothing, and was ready to go. Hibana hasn't let the hero rest yet. She wants them to push deeper into this forest and smash into something far deadlier. He asked her if she knew that bear was called a blade bear, and then they told him the terrifying truth. Anyone who runs into it dies, because it's an A-rank monster, the kind of danger you don't survive. And man, he was way stronger than that guy. That's when it hit me. Once Hibana stayed by his side, they couldn't touch him, because she was a rock-solid knight who never failed. At last they reached the sea. A salty sting filled the air, and when the waves finally crashed in front of them, Hibana didn't even believe they made it to the sea. As soon as Hiro laid eyes on the sea, a surge of inspiration hit him like lightning. That's salt. If they can haul it out of here, they'll cash in with neighboring countries fast. It took him half a day to reach her, and every second felt worth it. Then he turned to Hibana and demanded how much farther she could carry. Right now, she's hauling around 50 kilos of monster guts, so she can scoop up the same amount again right after. She asked him straight up if he was testing whether she could actually save him, because she couldn't afford to push herself too hard. Then they'll load up 100 kilograms of salt, and he'll grab half for himself. Hibana shot him a question. Did he really have to grab all of that at once when they'd already found the sea? He said, if you haul 100 kilos in one go, that'll be the perfect gift for the kingdom. Each person eats about 1.5 kilograms of salt a year, so 1,000 people burn through roughly 1.5 tons. Bring 100 kilograms of salt, 15 times, and the kingdom's yearly supply gets fully reloaded. So he'll cut through the hassle by being just a little reckless. He crossed his fingers and prayed he'd snag all the salt before the day was over. He pitched the idea of starting to make salt right away. Hibana stepped in and asked if she could help, and he just told her to come back later. While she waited, she suddenly decided to go fishing, and before you could blink, she stripped off her clothes and jumped right in. He couldn't stop wondering if she wasn't ashamed. She snatched a fish from the water in a flash to feed herself right away. The water felt perfect, and she leaned in and asked if he wanted to jump in and swim. And once he finished what he came for, he wasted no time, because he was ready to do it right after. Then he lifted his hands, ready to unleash a spell. He leaned into the oars and shoved the water out of his way. He sculpted a sparkling glass pool right out of the sand. She stared in shock as he actually went and did it. And I couldn't help wondering, if they'd built the pool the normal way, how many days would it have taken them? Iroh's eyes locked onto Hibana's swimsuit-clad body, frozen in shock as he stared. But he told himself, it's way too soon for shock. He'll tear his own intestines into a hose. Trust me. It's not a sight you want in your head. Then he'll dump water into the pool until it's brimming. The water started moving on its own. Hibana snapped, is this magic too? But the truth hit them. It was just ordinary science. Right here it all runs on the siphon principle. Water gets pulled from the sea, where it's high, straight into a pool with low water levels. Then it turns seawater into pure salt, just like that. It's all alchemy. No big magic needed, she demanded, like the answer was right there. He said they'd just have to wait for the water to dry up on its own, because there was nothing they could do. Every drop of water vanished into thin air, and all that was left was a stubborn pile of salt. They grabbed salt, and Hibana was freaking out because it was exactly the kind of cool she needed. Then the hero ripped the seal off and started pouring water back in. Seawater's got just 4% salt, and he knows exactly how much water to pour in to make the pool completely full. So you'll get more salt faster by cranking up its concentration and boosting the amount you collect. He just kept repeating it over and over again, like he couldn't stop. As he pondered it, he realized it wasn't easy to unleash that much magic over and over again. Out of nowhere, Hibana whipped his hand up and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Then she thrust some water into his hands and let him take a gulp. And she told him not to push himself so hard. If he suddenly felt sick, she ordered him to rest right away. But the hero is about to get wiped out in no time. If they don't grab it right now, the power thereafter slips away for good. Then he begged Hibana to help him go gather salt. This bag is built for you, it's super tough, and it stretches a ton. Hibana hacked the log into planks, and with those planks in hand, they started hauling in salt. She leaned in and asked, so you're telling me salt is really that easy to make? If you do all of this solo, with zero alchemy, You're looking at least a full week. She couldn't help wondering how much training it would take to boost her magical power that far. But really, it was pure luck. Hiro got hit with an absurd amount of magical power from the day he was born. It's basically a miracle that he's stacked with magic, because the responder keeps pouring it in, the more intel they unlock, and only he can wield that power to its full potential. Hibana couldn't help it. He shot a jealous look and demanded why he didn't just use magic to scoop up every last grain of salt. They were heading back to the Devil's Forest, and he worried his magic wouldn't cut it. So he swallowed his pride and apologized for needing to use his hands. She got the whole message instantly, shrugged it off like it was just another workout, and then, bags in hand, marched straight through the forest like she was there to train. Oh, right here, she suddenly heard something. The prince was totally unhinged, in the best way, so he ditched fancy plans and teamed up with the peasants to build brand new roads. He got it and then admitted, "Yeah, I know I'm kind of a weird person." Hearing that, she thought, wow, what a great guy, and suddenly she wanted to be just like him. Training your body while helping people at the same time feels absolutely awesome. Heat of embarrassment crawled up his neck that she'd even heard about it, yet somehow, he couldn't help feeling relieved too. Then he threw everything into honoring her as a true heroine. He knew the sea was right here and that salt could be harvested, but he still just sat there and did nothing. He couldn't make it through the Devil's Forest solo, but she tagged along with him, and now they've got salt to share with the whole crowd. And he turned to her, all grateful, thanking her for her help. It stung her pride a bit, but joy still lit her up. She thanked him too, practically glowing, because now she's his knight and he's finally going to save this kingdom for real. They ripped their way back home, grabbed the salt and rushed it to the people who needed it. By the time they finally started walking, the sky had already swallowed the day. Hibana's eyes locked onto barricades, barreling into the road ahead. Turns out she's still got a ton of power left in her. But the truth is, they'd been trekking for ages, and even she was finally wiped out. She could stride even under moonlight because she'd been trained to do exactly that. And Hiro could move too, thanks to his magical vision. Then she realized the road felt weirdly safe. Almost no monsters showed up at all. That's the whole reason he used that perfume. She swore their new invention erased the stench from their sweat, because that nasty smell is the one monsters hate more than anything. But it's only a trial sample, yet it already kicked out results, so she asked if it wouldn't be way easier to use it on the road. Now he pulled it out to find out what monsters were lurking here, because if he could avoid it, he wouldn't touch those spirits, but between everything piling up and his exhaustion, skipping them would be deadly. There are 11 monster types roaming that forest, but these perfumes fail on 3 of them, because some monsters don't find the smell disgusting, and one has no sense of smell at all, so he learned plenty fast. He wants regular soldiers to march through this forest safely, using spirits, and that's exactly what this test was all about. Hibana nailed every single thing he explained. He stumbled into the truth about monsters, cranked the compass to see if it lied, chased the sea, whipped up salt, then tested perfume too, because today felt like one brutal trial after another. But hold up, because the most important part is about to explode into action. Hibana was halfway to asking what he meant when, out of nowhere, the guards shouted for Prince Hiro. They were freaking out, because they'd been gone for way too long. He apologized for bothering them at this hour, but he couldn't waste a second. He had to reach the castle right away, because those brothers were absolutely not asleep. The guy who's fighting to save this country won't wait till tomorrow. So we rushed to tell Takumu and Agatha that salt is coming. Takumu and Agatha stood shoulder to shoulder beside the guards, inside the room. In the very middle, they dumped piles of salt like a warning from the gods. Right then, Hiro burst in with Hibana at his side, and Hibana greeted everyone with a bright hello. He shouted for them, but he showed up late anyway. And then he grumbled about Agatha. The hero swallowed his pride and apologized. Turns out they were filthy and desperately needed to get cleaned up. He demanded to know if the salt had anything to do with what happened. You could tell they were freaking out, because he'd somehow gotten his hands on salt. In this place, every single person is chasing a dream that burns in their chest. First, Prince Hakumukarta Rosa is a battle-hardened warrior. the strongest man in the kingdom, who plans to smash his way to victory, rescue the kingdom by force, and reclaim the rich land that neighboring kingdoms stole along with the people living there. Prince Agatha Carderosa is a master of calculation. He's plotting to save the kingdom with diplomacy, aiming to make it a vassal of a far more powerful country. And Hero Carderosa, he's just as top tier as his brothers. The third prince's spot is basically a bonus seat for his spare brother. Up to this point, he could do anything he wanted. But now he seized the moment to give salt to the people, so today he's stepping into the fight for his dream. Takumu didn't waste a second. He cut straight to the chase and asked where he'd gotten the salt from. The hero swore there was a sea beyond the devil's forest. Then he built a pool there and cooked the salt down until it vanished into thin air. Yeah, if it was actually true. So tell me, how many people actually died because of salt? The neighboring country orders them to hand over their treasures. So they strip their own riches down to the bone just to get enough salt to survive. They don't have enough, so they slash the food and waste it away. Then their own people starve to death. Their kingdom is starving for salt, and the salt they're mocking about isn't funny at all. It's an insult aimed straight at everyone who's cried. So the hero snapped that he wasn't rotten enough to lie about the salt. Takumu totally got it, every single detail, and he showered him with praise for doing it. Trying to congratulate a man who's already staring down his future as the next king is a terrible idea. He won't expect it, but you've got to do it now. Then he stormed up to Takumu and fired off just one request. With Hibana, they can slip through the devil's forest. No one else has that power. But if anything goes wrong with them, the salt won't get delivered, and they can't afford to be left without it. He demanded his army right then and there. Takumu nodded without a single hesitation. Tomorrow, he'd pick out his best fighters, send them out, and even make sure he saw them off himself. Hiro practically cheered that Takumu was coming, because he couldn't wait to teach him how to make salt. He's got soldiers hand-picked and trained by his brother backing him up. And honestly, it's a relief they never bothered to interrogate him about a thing. And then Agatha snapped, asking if they'd lost their minds. Because this was the devil's forest, where you could get swallowed by the trees in seconds. Did they even stop to think what would happen when deadly monsters came charging? Their kingdom was teetering, and they couldn't just watch their soldiers die for nothing. While Takuma's still reeling, he gets it instantly. He's already proven his worth, so Takuma pushes for a steady supply of salt. Agatha doesn't care at all, but he has to win her over, or chaos will explode and problems will stack up fast. The hero snapped, "Calm down." So he stomped off and built magical devices to channel all that fury. They've got a magic compass that points the way home, so they won't get lost. And if they summon those spirits, 3 out of the 11 monster types won't dare come near them. The top squads will likely smash through the last 3 monster types, and he's already gathered intel, down to exactly where they're weak. But he's totally clueless about these new monsters, and right now, he can't do a single thing to stop them. Takumu nodded with Hiro, because he'd ridden side by side with his knight the whole way, and together they tested the compass and the spirits until everything finally worked. So why couldn't his army pull off what Hiro did when Kumu asked? If Agatha meant it like that, he's gonna take it straight as an insult. Agatha then snapped back that there was zero proof. The hero was telling the truth. Then Takumu shoved the shocking amount of salt the hero carried into his face. And Agatha still refused to believe there's a sea lurking past this devilish forest. They'll finally pull off the rescue and save their subjects. After hearing the whole story, Agatha finally nodded and agreed. He knows grabbing that salt isn't optional. It's the mission's top priority. I couldn't let it go, so I grilled Kuro. How on earth did he know the sea was waiting behind that forest? He wouldn't dare step into a place this dangerous unless he'd already mapped every inch since he discovered the sea. And somehow he still pulled off enough salt in a single day to feel unstoppable. So what's the real reason? And why was he making travel tools to cut through the forest in the first place? It's all got a reason. He's always been unreal and terrifying, but this crosses the line. He demanded Hiro explain everything, or he'd refuse to believe a single word. This time Takumu didn't hesitate. He agreed with Agatha, but Hiro couldn't get a word out. Too many people crowded the place, and every attempt to talk got swallowed instantly. He demanded they let the guards go, because that was the deal, no exceptions. After a while, the noise finally faded, and they were left alone, even with a guard standing right outside the door. Unease crawled over him and wouldn't let up. One day, his father dropped the bombshell and told him, "You're adopted. Do you think they see him as some little brother? Because he's terrified of the power they throw at him." And it's not just that. Both they and their brothers see saving their kingdom in totally different ways, and they're all dead certain of it. Even though they share the same blood, these brothers are locked in an enemy war, day after day. But for his wish to finally come true, they'll need the power of these two. So he refuses to hide it, because even now they may still need him. And that's why he finally spills his secret. The brothers want to save the kingdom, so if they're certain his help will do it, he'll back them all the way, because he truly believes in the brothers' love for their homeland. So he has to win them over, make them believe this power is their greatest shot. He told everyone he'd inherited an alchemist's legacy, mastered alchemy, forged deadly tools with it, and even learned the secrets of the sea from a map tucked inside that inheritance. Hearing that, they could finally kick him out of the kingdom, and he couldn't stop wondering what kind of nightmare they'd unleash next. Takumu is going to ask him straight up if he got the message, that the church has forbidden alchemy. He's not getting off that easily. Death isn't the end of this. But even so, he'll still forge a miracle with alchemy and save the kingdom. If nobody steps in right now, it's going to die, plain and simple. You have to get this. Each of them is battling on their own, doomed to fight a war they can't possibly win. Takumu and Agatha locked onto the problem and knew they couldn't just pretend it wasn't happening. Then he corners Takumu and demands a squad, soldiers armed with magical weapons, so they can smash their way into neighboring countries. The hero clocked it instantly. Good catch. His plan is simple. Plug the power gap with magic swords. If those elite soldiers swing true magic weapons, they'll become the deadliest in the land, and he'll finally reclaim every piece of territory they've stolen from them. This is the exact world he's been chasing in his dreams. Even though they're badly outfitted, their troops are brutal and battle-hardened from spending all that time fighting monsters, so they might not be at each other's throats with Kinara, but their elite soldiers can absolutely hold their own against the Golden Knights. Still, they don't have enough raw military power, but there was no future in that. Those magic swords, miasma would literally chew them to pieces, and even if he pulled off a quick win, he'd still be slaughtering the elite soldiers for nothing. Brace yourself for a spine-chilling crash course in raw power, and the brutal retribution that comes swinging right after. Then he shot Agatha a look. Was he really about to beg other strong countries for protection? Or was he trying to save his nation by selling it off? Turns out the hero uncovered everything, including the truth about him. Agatha snapped that saving their kingdom left them with only one option, and it was way better than the stupid plan Jock was pushing. But Hiro never expected it to shake up anything at all. The kingdom already traded away its sister to survive. So now tell me, what's he planning to do next to keep the whole thing from falling apart? If you belong to someone, you don't have anything of your own. That's the whole point. Diplomacy is the only way to stop this mess before it spirals out of control, said Agatha. He thinks he can pull it off. But Hiro quickly discovers exactly how far he's allowed to go. All he does is stretch out their lives, but that still won't stop them from losing the kingdom. So he slams the door on every single one of their plans. But if he won't budge, then how in the world is Hiro supposed to save them with alchemy? He promised he'd find them another way out, so he made it clear they weren't getting just salt. And he demanded that Hibana unleash alchemy's true power for him. She swung the door open and shouted, "Come in." A girl burst into the room, clutching something in her hands. The guard was ready to toss her out, but Takumu stepped in and ordered him to let her inside. The girl yanked aside the dirty rag, and there, hidden underneath, sat a loaf of bread. It was plain white bread. Takumu shot a question right away. Did they truly grow wheat in Cratarosa? Agatha could not believe it. She even swore he'd fallen for the lie and bought it. But it was alchemy's magic that turned wheat from their kingdom's fields into bread. That monster's carcass becomes perfect fertilizer, and this wheat shrugs off cold and disease, then shoots up in just 3 months. If they still doubt it, that arrow points straight to the fields. With his alchemy, he can go even further than you ever imagined. Then he pushed the idea, try it, and insisted I didn't add a thing. Kumu grabbed the bread, ripped off a chunk and chomped it down. That bread was straight up insanely delicious, like, one bite and you're already obsessed delicious. We never imagined their kingdom could pull off bread so insanely good. Wheat's not just a breeze to grow. It also tastes ridiculously good, way better than anything they get in other countries. Alchemy can pull off that exact kind of miracle too. Hiro snapped that alchemy didn't just make life richer, it sparked it, and ordered Hibana to hand the sword to her brother. Hibana agreed, right on the spot, but only if they promised to come back for it later. Takumu stared at the sword in pure, jaw-dropping awe. This blade reeks of no miasma at all, so it can't even be measured against their swords. It's on a whole other level, way stronger. As expected, Takumu clocked everything instantly, like he could read the whole thing at a glance. And it's all alchemy. This hero can tear every last trace of miasma out of the magic swords in his squad. Nope, he's going to blow past all of that, forging blades that absolutely outshine them. And he slammed it down again. He refused Takumu's idea of war and shut Agatha's colony plan down for good. He's about to turn this kingdom into a gold mine with alchemy. Salt, wheat, and even swords are all part of his plan. He's about to blow their minds with a powerful, self-sustaining kingdom, one that can defend itself against any outside country. With all of this, they'll finally have a way to protect themselves, and he's not content to stop there. He wants to do even more. They've already paid their dues, and they deserve joy just as much as anyone. So don't try to sell him peace while hunger still exists. He's dead set on turning that kingdom into a booming paradise. Takumu and Agata stared straight at him, like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Then they burst into loud laughter together. What Takumu would do to his knights, using their lives as the price, would be way worse than anything his younger brother's alchemy could ever unleash. Agatha nodded along, because if they did anything else, they'd just be throwing their lives away for nothing. And they swore the hero wasn't just good, he was right. All they were aiming for was a delay, because they never had a shot at stopping the kingdom's prosperity. They felt it in their bones. They wouldn't quit, not even when they knew the truth, because deep down, he was fighting tooth and nail to save the kingdom. It's wild that he can smile knowing the kingdom is about to be saved. But he was head and shoulders above the rest. Even while he laughs, it's clear he's falling apart. Hiro can see the sadness hiding behind it. He spilled his secret to them because he could see how badly they wanted to save the kingdom. Sure, the shape of the idea changed, but the meaning stayed the same, and he begged them to stop saying he could take it all by himself, or that every move they made was pointless. He dropped one demand on them. He needed their help, and he needed it now. He could make this whole country rich, but he can't control everything, and he sure can't fight the way Takumi does. And he won't just lose the chance to inspire others. He'll also fail to negotiate with the neighboring countries. Alchemy can only craft what's convenient, but if you mess it up, it all falls apart, and then nothing works, not even when he needs their power. So he straight up declares, I'm using both of you. Agatha snapped that he's stupid. So does he honestly think they'll just roll over and go along with him? But listen, he wants them to take it and use it. He fully trusts them, because he knows their strength and sharp minds are the real deal. If they band together, they'll save their kingdom. He'll slip into the shadows and fight, but he needs them right there beside him. And let them choose. Whoever steps up will be crowned the next king. Takumu and Agatha locked eyes and let the tension speak for them. These words from the hero, that's the real message. This is what he's been trying to say all along. If his little brother mouths off like that, he can't just shut up and play innocent like a kid. There's nothing he can do about it. Now he's got Takumu's army at his back, and he won't play prince. He'll step in as the general and command them all. Agatha stepped in to help Hiro too, whether he'd been given the alchemist's legacy by accident or if he just couldn't match her power, because she still didn't want to follow him. But when their ship started going down, she had no choice and had to save him. He'll back him to the end. And once it all pays off, he'll rise to become a minister. The hero shot back, "So what do you mean by that?" Takumu told him he'd stepped down from the throne and handed it over to him. Agatha jumped in too, because this move would help the kingdom, and it would make sure they finally recognized him. They'll stay silent about Alchemy. As long as Alchemy keeps believing in himself, he'll save their kingdom and they'll back him all the way. These are the brothers he's got. And they grilled him, straight up asking if he actually believed a word he said. If he calls out whether they're telling the truth, they'll hear it as an insult. Then he leaned in and demanded they back him up. They grinned and told him, "Don't worry, lean on us." This is the very first time the three princes of Cardaro have ever joined forces. This is a real start, but not for saving the kingdom of Cardarosa. It's the kickoff to its prosperity. He was convinced that once they joined forces, nothing could stop them. Yet that fearless belief turned out to be completely hollow. Morning hit, and our hero jolted awake with a giant, stretched-out yawn. After hours of brokering with his brothers, exhaustion finally hit him hard, and it absolutely didn't sit right with him. A voice snapped from behind him, asking if he was headed the right way. It was Takumu's squad plus him, and once they'd grabbed all their gear, they set out toward the sea. Turns out it really paid off. When everyone finally teamed up, it all came together. They ordered him to master alchemy to boost the kingdom, handle the army, watch every twist of domestic politics, and even negotiate with other countries. But he just couldn't keep up with all of it. He trusts his brothers completely with the stuff they're built to handle. But there was one problem. Since his brothers threw away the throne, he was forced into the crown as the next king. Agatha jumped into the usual chores, but even she can't ignore the work that only a king can handle. Hibana said yesterday was cool, just like a prince should be, but now she's gotta call him king. He leaned in and told her, "Just call me hero," because that's exactly what he wants to hear. Hibana didn't just accept it, she signed on, ready to make it happen. And once she came back, she realized she'd never seen the king again. "The hero told me his dad is sick right now, trapped in a coma for years." Takumu was only meant to rule for a short time, but after his older brothers threw in the towel and renounced the throne, he's now stepping up as the acting king for real. Because the father might wake up any moment, they can't just pick a king on a whim, and that's why the kingdom keeps wobbling under the regency. Hibana seemed to get it all and even sent him off with a "good luck." But Hiro snapped at him to quit talking like she was some stranger. If he's slammed with work, she'll be swamped too, because when the next moves hit, they might just drop an assassin on both of them. She nodded and snapped, "I've got to train harder and get stronger." But the second she's stuck with a sparring partner, she's clueless, and training solo won't help her jump above her own head. And she leaned in asking, "Do you know anyone strong?" Hiro told her to go ask Takuma about it. And now he's hunting for a sparring partner too. Suddenly Hibana blurted, "So, if Hiro used alchemy, would he win?" And Hiro snapped back that even if he got a great weapon with magical transformation, his brother would still smash it. He's not like everyone else. He's freakishly strong, insanely skilled, and totally unique, just like that. Antai said she couldn't even hold a candle to him. He made it look ridiculously simple. Takumu is a military genius, sharp with strategy, but even more terrifying in personal combat. So when a skirmish with a neighboring country erupted, he immediately clocked a brutal five-fold gap in their power. When Hiro snaps that she's not even in the same league as him, it only fuels the fight, because she can't help but push him even harder. She's totally changed after all, can't believe it. Hibana just had one last question. She demanded to know who baked that bread. She knew wheat was awesome, but turning it into that kind of bread takes real know-how, and Hiro was going to spill the secret himself. He said this secret employee would be the key, and he'd introduce her to it later. She was totally thrown off. Wait, the secret agent was a girl. And right away the hero cut in, saying there was absolutely nothing between them. Suddenly, Takumu shot up to Hiro and started talking, and he demanded to know if they'd somehow lost their way. The compass says they're on the right path, and it's dead on. For one wild second, Hibana seriously thought a bear was charging at her. The soldiers pressed on, step by step, never slowing down. The hero figured today would be simple. Just drift to the sea, take one look, and then head out. But Takumo said they'd pitch camp by the sea, because brewing salt isn't quick. It takes grit, strength, and a ton of time. And it wasn't only about those nights. When he planned to snatch recruits for the escort, the kingdom's got a smart plan on its hands. About 50 unemployed knights, ready to be turned into something more. With training time gone for the remaining knights, they're stuck working the royal fields. So instead of wasting specialized warriors on mine salt, it's smarter to set up a base and ride along with the real miners straight to the sea. Takumu demanded to know if he could carve out a road, using nothing but his own strength. There are so many trees and tangled grass that every step gets swallowed, and with all those blind spots, you've got to stay razor-focused. Because if you slip up, you're toast. No one even knows how many years it'll take to carve a road through the devil's forest. Think about it. Those people don't just need the road to move salt. They need it to make everything work. People are going to need strong, filling food. And someday a new fishing port will have to rise. That's why this road matters so much. If huge carts hauling ship cargo can roll on it, then we've got to make it safe. To carve out that road, they've got to blast away monsters, fell trees, and clear the land. About 20 kilometers of brutal work before the path can even exist. The hero couldn't stop asking himself how much power he'd need to keep going without burning out. Because the grind never ended, and the danger was right there the whole time. How the heck did he decide, out of nowhere, to finally admit they were wrong? Why were they forced to slog through the devil's forest just to reach the sea, when all they wanted was a safer road? Kumu thought he was hearing weird things again, but Hibana just shrugged. She'd heard this kind of talk a million times, and Hiro promised, right to Winter's face, that he'd get it done before the cold hit. Only 3 months are left, and he swore he'll do everything, no excuses. Hibana's gut screamed that something was off, because she could practically feel he was plotting something. He's straight up counting the days, because he can't wait for what's coming. At last, the soldiers charged in and reached the roaring sea. Everyone lit up instantly, because yeah, there really was a sea right there. The sun was already slipping toward the horizon, and they'd been trudging here for ages. Crowds after crowds kept dragging them forward. Thank goodness they wouldn't be spending the night in the devil's forest. The soldiers suddenly erupted in loud cheers. Were seeing the sea for the first time, and they swore the salty scent hit them like a punch. The best soldiers act so natural, like little kids running around with nothing to fear. Once they finally set up camp, everyone's free to breathe and relax. The soldiers were jawing and laughing, but all they cared about was food, especially the fish swimming in this sea. They finally kicked off camp, throwing everything into place and settling in for the night. They slam everything in place fast, like they're racing the clock, and they can't stop buzzing about the sea. Takumu dragged Hiro and Hibana along for a fishing trip. I'm not exactly dying to eat canned food, but since the sea's right there, you can still grab something way tastier. All three were already planted on the cliff, fishing rods in hand, lines dangling into the unknown. The hero yanked a struggling fish straight onto his fishing rod. This place was empty, and the fish acted like they didn't have a care in the world, so they were stupid easy to catch. She leaned in and asked, "Can we actually eat this fish?" Hiro snapped that if they didn't rip the poison out, nothing could be done. Takumu wouldn't even sweat it if that fish had some barely their poison. They tossed in basic bait, and boom, the fish started snapping at the line. Takumu whipped around toward the hero. He abdicated the throne, handing the crown over to his successor. And it looks like not all of his subordinates have bought into it yet. Takumu was right. Everyone worships his raw strength, and they never once imagined they'd end up obeying a hero. But there was absolutely nothing he could do about it. Soldiers won't listen to empty words. They need to be shown force. The hero demanded to know what he should do, while he still couldn't challenge Takuma to a duel. Then, out of nowhere, Takumu blurted that it was actually a pretty darn good idea. At this pace, he'll never reach a prosperous kingdom, and there's no way he can beat Takuma. If they try to team up, he'll reveal the whole plan on the spot, because he's already trained them. He had a proposal. Anyone could clash in royal duels during personal nights. So yeah, This means he can absolutely take Takuma down. A single personal knight's strength is the kind of power that makes a king unstoppable. Hibana blurted out that she was weaker than Takuma, and when he confirmed it, she braced for disaster, until he said he'd train her. He didn't need permission. He was doing it no matter what. They don't just need a hero. They need someone who can take everything life throws at them and keep standing. But his personal light better not be weak. Hibana needs to train with Takuma and absolutely come out on top. He leaned in and asked if she regretted it. She shut it down cold, because she had no right to regret the massive difference in their strength. She's grinning right now, and you can bet she's about to level up and get way stronger. It was a solid answer, but getting stronger would take time, and Takuma couldn't stand waiting. So the duel's locked in for a week. Then if she can't pull it off, Hero steps in with a weapon Alchemy forged. With the two of them united, they'll take him down. And once it's over, he'll step into the throne as the strongest king of all. The hero snapped up his offer with a grin, and Hibana didn't even flinch. Then it's all decided, except he still has to say one last line, a final test to see if he's really a hero. He said he'd forge the kingdom stronger with alchemy. Then he wouldn't trust a word of it unless this girl proved she could beat him. And he leaned in and demanded I remember every single detail. He nailed every single word. Hero was about to go all in and prove it to him. The soldier burst in to report that the tents were finally up, and now they could start cooking dinner. Beating Takuma feels like a god-level miracle. He used to brag that he could survive his brother for just 3 minutes, because deep down, they both knew they had zero chance to win. So the only goal was to buy a few precious seconds. She'll train alongside her brother, but no matter what she does, this weak strength gap between them won't vanish. Hibana admitted he'd been pretty down in the dumps, and honestly, that's way too interesting to ignore, right? Seriously, if you're an alchemist like him, nothing in this world is ever boring. He stared at the problem and begged for an answer. What could he do to smash past his brother? And what weapon could he forge to close this brutal gap? He was absolutely seething about it. Night dropped, and the soldiers huddled by the fire, sizzling up fish to eat as the flames danced. They were meant to stick to the plan. By tomorrow morning, they'd be up early, sweeping the beach clean, and then starting a brand new salt field. The hero even scribbled out how to build the tool and told them to follow every instruction, because by tomorrow, he and Takuma would be gone, and everyone else would be left to deal with it alone. A huge gap stretches between him and his brother's soldiers. Hibana leaned in and asked if he'd dare use the pool. He typed back that you had to mine salt the hard way. No magic allowed. So even people who can't cast spells could go out and dig their own salt. And somehow they shoved themselves right back to the very beginning. Only this time, they dumped in even more work. But even so, the hero still felt he had to do it. After all, her brother promised her, win, or don't ask me to believe alchemy can save this kingdom. If they aren't massively weaker than the other countries, then they can pull off anything they want. Back then, weapons were built for the weak, because the best weapon is the one anyone can swing, and the one that can bring down anyone. People used to think, if a country's rich, someone will come swinging. So they pumped everything into building deadly, powerful weapons. First, you've got to strip the enemy of their power. Then Takuma steps in with his insane strength and relentless knights to land the finishing blow. And that's the whole game plan, his main tactic. Hibana can't deny how grateful she is for that powerful weapon, but she's determined to beat him using her own strength. And the hero pushed her too, demanding she rise past her brother. It might not turn into a duel. Either way, after that, she keeps training for a few more days, or she moves past him. She made him that promise. No clue how long it would take, but one thing was certain. She would grow into the strongest fighter. If it can't win, it doesn't deserve to exist. She's determined to become worthy of a hero. No excuses, no shortcuts. They locked eyes for a tense beat, both caught in the silence. Yuno spun away, grinning and saying it was a good thing she had that kind of confidence. The air felt weird the second it hit. Hibana leaned in and demanded to know what he'd cooked up. You wanted to carve a road from the sea straight into the kingdom, but you only had 3 months left, and Hibana was sure it couldn't be done. But Hero was 100% certain he could pull it off, because he only ever promises what he can actually do. So she had to crank up a solid plan, figure out the timing later. But right now, she had one mission: build the weapon this week. But that's not the whole truth. Tomorrow morning he'll lock in the road plan. Then right after that he'll start building it. And while it's rising, he'll be thinking about what weapons he can put on it. By day, he hammers out a road while his mind races with weapon ideas. And when evening hits, he starts forging a weapon prototype. Morning prep, afternoon building that road and plotting weapons, night turning his plan into a prototype, then training Hibana. It's basically him, and that's his superpower. He hammers out the plan in his head, scribbles it down, then obsessively works through every last detail. Tomorrow, they'd march right back to the castle and start working immediately, so he begged Hibana to help. After they slog through the Devil's Forest one more time, he leans in and lays out his plan to her, convinced it'll be the perfect training. He catches her off guard every single time, so they clenched their fists, drew a line in the sand, and decided to give it everything they had. Right at noon the next day, they were already at the very edge of the Devil's Forest. They finally burst into their destination, right on the edge of discovery. They dumped every scrap of paperwork on Agate, and now it's time, starting the road right away. Hibana asked if they wanted to step inside, since they were right by the forest entrance. If they can't hack their way through the Devil's Forest, they'll have no choice. Then they'll be forced to push through this hellhole instead. Then he slammed his palm into the ground, hard, because it wouldn't push through the forest, so he made the forest give in. What he was about to build wasn't really a road at all. It was something completely different, a non-road. He was digging a tunnel with sheer determination. It was even more unhinged than trying to build a whole road. But that wasn't how it went. Hiro grabbed the moment and asked her to come over. Alchemy lets you bend matter, and sand and earth are the perfect fuel because the deeper you dig, the deeper the hole plunges. He even slants his tunnel on purpose so the cart rolls smoothly. Then once they hit the right depth, he turns and digs sideways, carving a route that leads straight to the sea. By carving out a tunnel, they can ignore the trees and monsters. And on yesterday's hike, he realized there's no underground water here either. Yeah, he had no clue what lurked underground, but the second those monsters showed up, he'd start panicking for real. Hibana stared at the tunnels rising before her eyes, still unable to wrap her head around the fact that he was building them with alchemy. The hero told her to believe in him, but he's not stopping there. This time, he's going to do even more. Hebin was freaked out about the ceiling too, like it might crush down on him. But Hiro snapped back that if they slammed the wall, it would be brutal, because alchemy had the earth compressed to the max. It's nothing like brick. This stuff is insanely strong. It seals tight against water, and there's no way it can collapse. Once this road is finished, people will stride safely from the city straight to the sea, so they can both harvest salt and haul in fish. Because the lake near the kingdom got hammered by overfishing, catching even one fish feels nearly impossible. But hit the sea instead, and the food comes back richer, while everyone's spirits soar. Hibana stared at that grin, and couldn't wait a second for this day to finally arrive. And somehow she still clocked just how much magical power he was burning, like her fainting was one more heartbeat away a long time ago. Hiro tried to tell her, "I was born like this," but she needed to understand the truth. It crushes him too, every single time. A tunnel meant for 2-horse carts has to let them slip through without a snag, so the rules are set. It needs to be 8 meters wide and 3.5 meters tall. But powering that kind of passage drinks a ton of magic, and Hibana immediately asked if she could help ease the load. Hiro demanded she scrape the dirt and haul away every rock. Earth can't be squeezed forever, so we've got to stop all that leftover soil and rock from piling up. Strength training hit the sweet spot for her, and it felt just right to keep himself from crashing from exhaustion before his evening workout. The hero told everyone to train without pushing themselves to the breaking point, but she shot back with a fierce refusal, swearing she'd grind as hard as she possibly could. She's chasing power, so she's hitting yet another brutal workout to level up. Once he accepted it, he leaned in and warned her to stay careful. then quietly figured he'd have to step in and make sure she was okay if illness ever struck. Then they dove into the studio and started hammering out that song. It all came down to his strength. He couldn't help but wonder just how long it would hold out. While Hira dug the tunnel, Hibana piled up the leftover dirt and stone, hauled it in a cart, and rushed it back. Time dragged on, yet they were still at it. And after a while, they finally hit their limit and dropped like they couldn't go another step. They called it quits for today, because if they pushed one more step, there'd be zero strength left for the evening work. They'd already burned through 600 meters of the 20-kilometer stretch, and honestly, he hadn't expected to be this far. Even Hibana could barely stay awake. Exhaustion crushed him. Because of her, he could lock in and only worry about building the tunnel. So he turned to her and thanked her like crazy for the help. She caught something strange in the air. After hauling earth all day, you collapse in pure exhaustion. Because the deeper they dig, the farther you've got to haul away the excess. And she swore it was an absolute killer workout for her muscles and stamina. If they stick to their usual pace, they'd wrap it up in about a month. So the fact they've got 3 months to finish is seriously awesome. But right here, I was putting my faith in 2 whole months. They don't just dig one tunnel, they keep pushing deeper. She leaned in and asked what else he wanted to do. Start by checking the wall from top to bottom. Reinforce it hard, because if you don't, it'll collapse. After that, you'll need a device that blocks water completely. And if any water shows up, you've got to install a drain. And you'll need light here too. And a device that keeps the air fresh and moving. And to pull all of this off, you're talking more than 2 months. So much has to get done, no shortcuts. He's dreaming of building a whole bunch of amazing things. But she cuts him off and demands to know if all of this is really necessary. The hero shoots back that they need the road not just to move salt, because the road itself will prove incredibly useful and absolutely vital. And then boom, something else hit him. He called it out. She looked totally drained because she'd been training with her brother every evening. She jerked to her feet and insisted she wasn't tired at all, that she still had plenty of strength. Yet her whole body shook so hard it screamed she wasn't okay. Hiro demanded she open her mouth, then popped a tiny pill right in. He shoved it into Hibana's mouth and barked at her, "Don't spit it out," and he shoved it straight into our mouths. Hibana's stomach flipped the second the pill hit his tongue, and instant sickness surged through him. Just like that, she crumpled onto the ground, motionless as if death had taken her. She demanded to know what he was up to, and the answer hit her like the worst taste on earth. And she shot him a warning, "Don't you dare laugh about it." Hiro swallowed his pride, apologized, then leaned in and asked how she was feeling. Did she finally feel better? Then she sprang for a jump, throwing herself into motion. Her body suddenly felt weightless and she couldn't believe it, so she blurted out, "Wait, are there really pills that can erase fatigue like that? They're crafted with alchemy too, using ingredients so rare they're priceless. But pop too many pills and your body gets crushed under the weight. They can't just be used like that. There's a war looming, and he refuses to burn through the supplies for nothing. That medicine can snap exhausted soldiers back into combat readiness in no time, like salvation at last. If he can't spot the difference between her and her brother, he'll never craft a proper weapon, and if he's worn out, he won't be able to train." He felt awful because she'd already decided to grind herself to the bone, drink that medicine fast, and get back to training right after she collapsed. She grabbed his hand and thanked him for the life-changing medicine. He snapped to a decision. He was going back. But right before he left, Hibana had to squeeze out one last question. She slid him one tiny request, and it hit like a big deal. And she boldly asked if she could be his lover. Then she held her breath, waiting for his answer to her request. The hero leaned in and demanded, "So what are you even talking about?" She blurted out on the spot that she was in love with him. So she finally swallowed her fear and confessed everything to him. She can't be his queen, but he can keep their whole thing hidden, and she wouldn't say something like that just to sweet-talk a man. He leaned in and demanded, "Are you telling the truth?" Hibana fell head over heels for him the moment that meeting, especially after he had the courage to stand up to 2 brothers. That's why she leans in and tells him exactly this. She leaned in and demanded, "So what would you say if this happened to you?" Then he leaned in and asked Hibana straight up, Has she ever dated anyone? No, she hadn't met them yet, but she felt deep down they could handle it. People are animals too, and you just have to trust your instincts. They locked eyes with each other, holding the stare like it meant everything, and the hero snapped around, begging her for a moment so he could think it through. She told him she'd wait, because every swordsman knows patience is their sharpest advantage. Then she grabbed the cart and vanished down the road. The hero couldn't stop thinking about why she blurted it out of nowhere. Royal marriages are basically politics in wedding dresses. Tries to lock in alliances with other nations, and since nobody sane wants to marry a supposedly poor country, they act like that choice comes without any real problems. Hibana is straight up powerful, stunning, and razor smart. And trust me, there's something big you're gonna want to hear about her. They've got to spend time together and really get to know each other, because that's what it takes. Soldiers were hammering through non-stop drills in the yard, training like their lives depended on it. Hibana and Hiro stormed in, then greeted everyone like they owned the place. Every single one of them had a wild, uncanny look, but somehow, nobody looked like they were being hated. Maybe they heard about that fight, and now they're dying to find out just how strong Hibana really is. They stormed into Takumi. First, he can't wait to test Hibana's power, so he'll push her into a fight with Harold. She tilted her head and locked eyes with Harold, and he leaned in and begged her, "Please, won't you fight with me?" Takumi warned him. If he didn't rein in those powers, fighting him was a death wish. He could accidentally end your life. Hearing that, Hibana didn't hesitate. She decided to unleash her power on the spot. She leaned in, grinned, and wished her a knockout run in the fight. Harold leaned in and demanded that Takumi actually prove he could cut loose. He said it with confidence, because he knows exactly what she can pull off. But now his interest in her is gone. Hibana and Harold were already planted in the arena, waiting like they owned the place. The hero stared them down and demanded an answer, just like it, from everyone else too. Hibana leaned in and demanded to know the rules. Harold suggested she train with wooden swords, and they'd clash until the very first strike landed. She nodded and agreed to every single one of those conditions. The hero stared at the power that was practically shouting from the herald. He was convinced he'd rank in the squad's top 12, because if magical power flowed cleanly over his body, it would crank his physical abilities up fast. Takumi snapped that they needed to ready themselves for battle. The second the fight ignited, both of them exploded forward at the same time. Hibana swung her sword hard, but Harold snapped up his guard and blocked the blow. Then she started raining down punch after punch on him. She darted forward, like the next second was already chasing her. Hibana spun in a tight circle, squeezing the herald with relentless force. He stiffened a little as her pressure closed in. Spectators erupted over her lightning footwork, but Harold had no choice. He was just scrambling to defend himself. She whirls around Harold, snapping into the perfect stance to launch her attack. There's just one tiny catch. The herald's holding strong and swatting away every hit, so you've got to land a strike and grab her before she slips out of reach. Harold's timing hit like a bullet, dead on, every single time. He suddenly flung her sword up into the air. But Hibana didn't just dodge. She actually held her ground and shook off his punches. Harold doesn't fall behind Hibana's speed, and her tactics absolutely exhaust everyone. Suddenly, Harold was already launching a flurry of strikes at her, but he missed. Hibana vanished from right in front of his eyes. She popped up right over his head, then swooped behind him like a shadow. As soon as he hit the ground, confusion slammed into Harold like a punch to the chest and got nailed straight by Hibana. Harold crumpled to the ground, and he admitted her win was no fluke, straight up strong. They caught their breath, then thanked each other like, "Man, that fight was intense." Then Kumu will step up and speak directly to them. He leapt onto them with praise, roaring about how fearless their fight was. Through her own sharp observations, Hibana proved she was powerful in a way only she could pull off. She leaned in and demanded to know what it all meant. Then he leaned in and begged to borrow her sword. When he grabbed her sword in his hands, he immediately started pulling out his own. He shoved it into the hero's hands and demanded he grip it tight, right in front of him. He snatched it, clutched it tight, and demanded to know what it was for. Takumi leaned in and warned, "I'm coming, and you'd better be ready." He tensed his leg and braced to spring forward in a sudden lunge. With one brutal swing, he sliced through his own sword like it was nothing, like butter. His courage shattered, and his heart dropped straight to his feet. Takumu praised that sword like it was flawless. Then his own blade said the same thing, and now it's absolute trash. Hibana shot Takumu. "Oh, why would you do that?" As Takumu kept double-checking their weapons for the fight. If Hibana had lost that fight, or if they'd swung wooden swords instead of real steel, then this exact thing would have gone down. She demanded to know just how much longer he'd keep underestimating her. Was he really trying to win by taking her hit? He told everyone he'd win. Like if he couldn't, then he never would have dared to say it in the first place. Hibana snapped at him that she didn't need his favors one bit. Then Takumu challenged her, saying, "Prove it, win. And if you do, the next fight won't be a walk in the park." But only if she can. She snatched her sword straight from Takumu's grip. The hero leans in and asks if she's really sure she can pull it off. She was so sure she'd win that it felt like fate had already picked her. At first, she just wanted to test their power, but now her mind is locked on one thing: winning. Apparently, fury was blazing in her eyes. Brother was acting so provocatively that he clearly hadn't realized he was slipping into underestimating Kibata. Takumu and Hibana took their places in the arena, ready for what was about to ignite. They burst out the news. Their battle was officially underway. And then it all went dry, like the last spark just died. Right there, blink, and it was over. Hiro realized he'd misread everything. He thought Takumu's brother would charge in first, and Hibana would only hold the line. But Hibana didn't play defense at all. He let Hibana fire first, then he dodged it with effortless ease, and ends the whole fight in a single, crushing blow. To be a real swordsman, you've got to hold the perfect distance and read your opponent's tempo before you ever swing. It wasn't speed or raw muscle that won the day, it was pure skill, razor-sharp and perfectly timed. From the very start, there wasn't any real plan for the brother, just a crushing gap in power that made everything feel inevitable. Takumu said she's got serious physical fitness. She grinds, but it's all talent and not hard work. Then he snaps, because he can't stand that kind of complacency. He only has himself on his mind, so he never even spots the enemy. If you can't spot what's happening, read what it means and see what's coming, you'll get crushed. Because the truly strong don't just fight back, they stay one step ahead. Right then he wrapped it up and ordered the soldiers, "Back to your posts." As the crowd started breaking apart, Takumu pushed through and headed straight for the hero. And he says Hibana's a great swordswoman, but none of that matters, because all she sees is winners and losers. He claims she thought it was just natural to lose to him, that she didn't regret it one bit, and that she wasn't interested in him at all. So she only thought about herself. And that fatal flaw sealed her fate. Hibana's never found someone her age she can really clash with, and the Golden Knights feel miles out of reach. She can't just size up an opponent and burst into an attack, so she has to taste the sting of defeat first, so it finally clicks. "I'm gonna win for sure." This is the only way to spot the enemy from their blind side. He's not just strong, he steers everyone onto the right path. And honestly, it was a relief they were fighting for the same side. After that, the hero thanked him, and she promised she'd get even stronger from here on out. Takumu also threw in a request for Hiro, and he demanded, "Make me a sword. And if he can, he'll turn that battered sword into something new." Takumu's alchemy forged Hiro's sword could slice right through it, and that ritual with the blade was his make or break moment. Even if it's been used like that already, none of it matters. He's chasing a rematch, and if he can, he's using it again. By finishing this ritual, he finally unlocked alchemy's power and stepped forward, no longer stuck in the past. Hiro nodded in agreement. Thanks to the training he'd gotten with Hibana, he was going to forge himself into a blade worthy of him. Normal metal has zero history. Cast enchantments on it and the compatibility tanks. But Takumi's brother brawled with his sword, so he's got real combat experience, and that means the enchantment will click perfectly. He just begged him not to swing that new sword at Hibana. That's exactly what Takumu had in mind. He was ready to see if they could finally outrun him. He grabbed the hero by the hands, pulled him out, and disappeared. Hibana was still planted in the arena, like she hadn't moved an inch. The hero slipped up behind her, closing the distance in silence. Hibana lost. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she stared straight at him. She got absolutely crushed in a defeat, so devastating it felt like the world caved in. She'd been defeated before, but nothing ever crushed her like this kind of disappointment. Hearing that, Hiro snapped that she needed to let go of the resentment. She's about to level up fast. No more clumsy slips, not after what's coming. And the hero put his faith in her without a single doubt. Then he told her to head home during the fight. He understood exactly what she needed, and he vowed he'd help her steal the win. Hibana nodded along, totally on his side. They stormed into his workplace together. She ran into her gap with Takumu again. No matter how hard she trained, she still couldn't close it in a single week. And now she had to chase hero strength. That word she uses now is basically a neon sign. Proof she's totally focused on what's coming next. She didn't want his pity at all. So he swallowed his consolation and stayed out of her way. Together, they're going to crush Takuma's brother. Hibana wasn't trying to win today. She just needed to see the gap between them. And that alone gave her all the answers she needed. She's right to call him a hero, but the truth is, he's way farther out than she ever imagined, even stuck in that awful spot, unable to move a single arm or leg. She's no longer as confident in herself as she used to be. He demanded why she shrank back so much, and she shot back that she wasn't going to stay like this anymore. She hurls insults at him, and he doesn't answer. He just fires back with nasty words. Ibana will catch up for sure, but even then beating him inside a week is straight up impossible. No matter how many swords he forged for her, she still couldn't stand his power, and the moment she fell back, she started panicking. What was she even going to do next? Hiro leaned in and said, "All that's left is one thing, and we have to do it." He upgraded everything except the sword. She leaned in and demanded, "So what does it mean?" This sword hits with a brutal mix, light on its feet, razor sharp, built to last, and wrecking power that lands at about a 4. And it's all because her blade's core is that perfect balance of lightness and sharpness. You can't make it lighter, but the sharpness is already more than enough. Her fighting style already hits with brutal durability and destructive power, so there's no reason to keep upgrading everything else. So he'll forge armor that sharpens his reflexes and supercharges his dynamic vision. Reflexes and razor-sharp vision kick in armor and all, but the body can't handle it for long, and you only get 3 minutes. This is more than enough to slice down even the toughest swordsmen, and she demanded to know exactly how he planned to forge armor like that. Then the hero snatched the responder doll, and then he swore he'd unleash electrical energy. Hibana practically gasped when she finally heard the wild truth about electricity. Then she leaned in and demanded to know what it was. The hero couldn't even tell if he'd managed to explain it at all, so I figured showing it on her would speed everything up. She asked if it was something good, and the hero snapped back right away. No way, not even for a second. And then his mind started racing, begging him to figure out what he should do next. Then he made his move. Hibana had a feeling it was going to be something downright indecent, and she told him, "Don't hold back, do whatever you want." So he couldn't let it go. He grabbed her hand and proved himself right there. She got blasted with electricity, and in pure shock she screamed out loud. He burst into a rowdy laugh, and she leaned in like, "Wait, why are you laughing?" He burst into laughter because she responded to his whole situation in the sweetest, most unexpected way. Hiro leaned in and said, "Turns out it's electricity. Your body has nerves, and that charge races through them. Muscles fire because electricity surges through the body. So if you intentionally conduct electricity, her muscles will snap tight on their own, like this, and then her hand lifts by itself." Hibin was furious. His hands moved by themselves, and he demanded to know if he really had to use a tool like that. By fiddling with the electricity in the brain, he can sharpen vision and smash reaction times, boosting the speed of those signals that hit the muscles. And that's exactly what he's building that armor to do. Hibana nodded and agreed to it. She's determined to fire up electricity in tomorrow's training, force herself to get comfortable in that armor, and drill Prince Tukumu's moves until she knows every twist and turn. Once again, she's all fired up, but it's going to take around 2 whole days to finish. So she has to sit tight and wait. She didn't hesitate, she agreed. Then she leaned in and demanded, Why does this have anything to do with obscenity? But no, she never let it go. Everyone's nerves fire electrical signals in their own way. So you've got to figure out exactly how much electricity each one can handle. So the electricity has to hit the skin straight on. If it's blocked, it messes everything up and the data goes inaccurate fast. Hibana got the full picture and demanded to know, could they really start pulling in data after eating and taking a bath? I just had to know why this was happening. She told him, I've got to get ready. I want to look stunning before I meet the person I love. After he took a bite, he shrugged like it was no big deal, and then blurted out that he was dying to meet someone. He vowed to meet the bread baker with magic in her dough, so he grabbed her and invited her along with him. She was dying to meet the very person who'd stolen Hiro's heart. He leaned in and demanded how she knew he had a thing for that man. She snapped back that she could tell, right from the way his voice sounded, that she understood. The second he starts talking about it, his whole face lights up like he's finally found peace. She just couldn't wrap her head around it. She was locked in and still clueless. Then the hero leaned in and basically confessed, saying he loved her because she's the key link, the one move that could save the whole kingdom. Hiro paced in the hall, waiting on Hibana to show up. Then she burst in, breathless and glowing with guilt, and apologized for keeping him waiting. She was rushing, so she threw on some casual clothes and sprinted out. The hero asked what was wrong, and when he saw it, it looked just like her. He pressed on and went right after the smell because it was doing the job. Hibana grabbed the perfume from the Principality of Kinnar, today's special beast, then decided to splash it on. He shot them a question. Weren't they really just about to grab dinner and pull the data from it? Hibana snapped no. She thought Hira might botch it today. But before that worry could even settle, he flat-out refused. She leaned in and called him a coward to his face. As they walked, she leaned in and asked, "So the royal family lives on this floor?" Then she explained they were about to meet one of them. She blinked in shock and shot back, "Wait, is that really your bride?" He fired a question at her, then ordered her straight into that room. Then he yanked the door open. They burst into a room that looked just like a library, all shelves and quiet power. Welcome to the royal room. It was her father's old office once. Then she tore it apart and turned it into a room of her own. A girl sat on the stairs, then snapped the book shut, and she tore into them, grading their worth in seconds. A little girl marched right up to them, closing the distance fast. She blurted it out, "Hibana's a knight." Hibana stared at her and couldn't stop thinking, "She's so cute." The hero didn't waste a second. He introduced Hibana to her right there. The girl stared at Hibana for a long, intense moment, and her joy exploded through her like fireworks. Then she clutched her hands together and told her, "My brother S filled me in on everything about you. Turns out, this girl is the hero's little sister. That's the kingdom of Carderosa's second princess, Nyuki Carderosa." She demanded to know why he'd never introduced them before, and she admitted that she barely ever shows up in public. Yet somehow she was standing face to face with her for the first time. It's all because of Miley's sister. She's refusing to let Nyuki be seen, and that's why he threw himself into an apology. Hibana clocked it. He was right, and there was no doubt left. She bowed to Nyuki, beamed with excitement, and introduced herself as Hibana Clarford, Prince Hiro's knight. She lit up with joy to finally meet him, and straight up asked if he was her brother's friend. The bonnet leaned in and asked, "So, you know we're friends, right?" She confessed that her body gives out fast, so she hardly ever steps outside. So he starts painting the world for her, one vivid story at a time, and every time he came by for a book before, he always filled her in about Hibana. Nyuki admitted, quietly but honestly, that she felt weak, yet she'd been secretly envying strong women for as long as she could remember. "And that's why I've always looked at her like she was unstoppable." Hibana seethed with jealousy, because he got stuck with such an amazing sister. "She's so adorable, I just want to scoop her up and hug her tight." Suddenly, they demanded she stop that and back off. Hibana heard the voice she knew, then snapped her eyes up. They were camped out, waiting for them to finally show up. It was the night Nyuki, Hiro, and Hibana's friend Rebecca showed up. Nyuki said that now that she was here, everything felt perfectly fine. Rebecca declared, with total confidence, that only she gets to hug her. The hero rushed up to Rebecca, flashed a grateful smile, and thanked her for saving the day. Rebecca didn't fight it. After all, Princess Naoki demanded it. But she'd never forget the humiliation of being forced to dress in servant clothes. When Hibana finally clicked, she realized it was her who'd brought them food back then, even though they hadn't crossed paths in ages. Rebecca snapped, "Is that why you don't know, because you're a bad student?" Then Hibana panicked and blurted out, "Relax, I'm kidding," and she greeted her like a spark, because she'd just become Prince Hero's knight, and she admitted that the hero was stubborn as stone, flat out refusing her on other nights. Turns out, he'd been waiting on her, because that promise between them meant everything. She lit up with joy and thanked me like it was the best news ever. He shrugged it off like, "It's nothing special." Rebecca can't stop missing her training with Master Heath. Then she leaned in and called him good, like it meant something more. But he kept leveling up fast, and she couldn't help but ask. Hibana figured Rebecca would rise to become an army commander. So yeah, it's downright shocking she ended up serving someone instead. If she's choosing a mistress for herself, then it can only be Princess Naoki. She's incredible, the real deal. Hearing that, Rebecca let out a quiet little laugh, and she confessed, "Princess Naoki is my whole heart, my greatest treasure in this entire kingdom, and she'll stand in the line of fire to shield her, no matter what it costs her life." Hibana blurted, "Wait, was she always like this?" Hiro said they're totally different from Naoki. Naoki just idolizes her. Then he marched up to Rebecca and told her, loud and clear, that her love for Naoki was obvious, so he'd go explain everything to Hibana himself. He leaned in and whispered that the two of them were secret allies. He fought his way into her brothers' hearts, and Naoki made it happen by baking bread. Rebecca, disguised as a servant, slipped it into their hands right under their noses. Right now, he doesn't want too many people knowing about them, so he leans in and begs for their help. And he chose to go back to the main reason they dragged him in here, because it was finally ready. Naoki leaned in and told Rebecca to bring it, and she shoved in a rag stuffed with something right in front of him. That was the paste Hiro demanded they make. The hero grabbed one thing and smashed it clean in half, and he snapped, "That was truly well done." When Hibana asked what it was, the hero leaned in and told her it was a kind of noodle. It was tough, looked totally unappetizing, and tasted like dry, sad canned food, because you had to cook it first before you could even think about eating it. You think it's nothing special, but boil that pasta in hot water and it turns ridiculously tasty. Made from wheat, sea salt their brother gave them, water and eggs, all mashed into dough, then shoved through a pasta machine their brother built with alchemy, leaving you with paste that has to be dried just right. The surface stays set and doesn't warp. Drying indoors brings moisture back so it won't split. And then sun and wind finish the job until the pasta dries completely. You can keep the paste for 3 years. So when the harvest is great, you make a huge batch and stash it away for the day the crops fail. Hibana had sampled every noodle in the Kinar Dukai, but nothing ever hit this tough, nothing. Rebecca had only ever laid eyes on dried bread in those cans, but she'd never once stopped to wonder about dried noodles. The hero found out from Naoki. She dragged him to the table to eat, and what she served wasn't just dried food. She told them to grab a seat at the table, because everything she cooked was ready and waiting. They all slid into the same table together, side by side, ready for whatever came next. Hibana stepped in and asked if they needed help, but they waved it off, because they were the guests, and that meant they had to handle things themselves. After all the prep was done, Naoki finally leaned in and told them, "Go on, enjoy my noodles." Those noodles looked so mouth-watering. You could practically smell the deliciousness already. Rebecca flashed a smirk and dared her, "Go on, try the pasta Princess Naoki cooked up," because that meal was made with pure, hard-earned effort. Hiro decided to kick things off by adding a pinch of salt. Then he spun the paste onto his fork like a pro, right before taking the bite. Then he shoved it into his mouth and started chewing like he meant business. It was insanely delicious, so much tastier than he ever expected. This pasta is straight up bizarre. Mayuki's food tastes easy and comforting, until the hero cooks it and turns it into total garbage. And the wild part is he never even realized salt could fix the taste that dramatically. Naoki told him she'd been practicing non-stop, and he was sure everyone would love the food she cooked. After so many tries, finally landing that ridiculously delicious dish was pure magic. Naoki dared Hiro to taste the pasta and sauce first, then showered him with insane compliments, and I decided to splash the white sauce in first. The moment Hiro tried it, he instantly figured out exactly what it was. It was straight-up potato sauce. They whipped it up with mushroom soup, then stirred in smooth puree and a hit of salt, because he carries memories from another world. A creamy onion soup puree serving like this barely even surprises him. But Naoki is the real deal. She whipped up that sauce like it was nothing, proving she's a culinary genius in a world where people only know how to cook food, not create magic. Hibana decided she had to try one more sauce. She couldn't wait another second. It hit his tongue like pure bitterness. This sauce starts with a punch of vinegar. Hibana couldn't believe it. Her kingdom had vinegar, and the paste plus that sharp sour sauce hit perfectly in her eyes. But get this, while they were cooking, they stumbled into vinegar by pure accident. Vinegar was right there, so she seized the moment and whipped up a killer sauce of vinegar, oil, salt, and dried meat. And that meat also ended up in soup, so she straight up asked, "So what did you think? Did you like it?" Hibana swore it was perfect. Either way, the options were insanely delicious. Every bite hits like pure, head-spinning flavor overload. She nailed it, so I asked her if I could borrow her recipes. Naoki grinned and eagerly agreed, and then decided to share those recipes with literally everyone. Rebecca lunged at Naoki, bombarding her with wild congratulations. They're not just handing out wheat to everyone. They're also dropping easy pasta recipes, packed with mouth-watering sauces. Naoki's help is pure gold, and you're gonna need it again and again as everything keeps escalating. Then the hero snapped into memory. She told him how she once made vinegar by accident. He leaned in and grilled her. "So did you finally manage to make what you were trying for?" She grinned and said, "Everything turned out just fine. It still has room to level up, but wow. Right now it already tastes incredible." Hibana leaned in and demanded to know exactly what happened. The hero leaned in and finally asked Naoki for what he'd been chasing for ages. Because this isn't just a request, it's a symbol of their country finally growing. Rebecca dove in too, and the moment she did, it blew her mind. She never imagined something like this could happen right in their own country. Hebin finally got curious and decided to try it, because everyone had been hyping it nonstop. Then Naoki leaned in and demanded Rebecca bring out everything she'd prepared. Then she grabbed some fancy decanter, like it was the key to everything, and she started pouring the drink into the wooden glasses, one smooth glass at a time. Everything erupted in violent hissing and foaming chaos. Hibana leaned in and sniffed him, like she just caught something only she could smell. And as soon as it hit, I instantly knew exactly what it was. The hero told her, "Just try it," and then promised she'd get every single thing instantly. The hero realized he hadn't touched a drink in ages. Then he slammed down that mysterious liquid and started chugging it. It's like your taste buds get a reward. Bitterness fades away, and suddenly you're hit with a rich, powerful sweetness that tastes like wheat and hops. It tasted absolutely unreal. Hibin literally couldn't wrap his head around it. He was stunned out of his mind. This is L, and the quality is so insanely high it'll blow your mind. Once he cracked the perfect new wheat, all he could think about was brewing alcohol. This won't save the kingdom in one dramatic sweep, but it'll make people's lives richer and happier, like how a symbol could show up in the flavor industry, say, a fine ale. It shocked me that she'd already tried ale in the Principality of Canner, but this time, something so delicious hit her like never before. When it came to taste, the hero learned from the respondent that the real magic was the wheat's quality, and Naoki's talent behind it. This is the taste of happiness. No basic bargain for a simple life, but a flavor built for a rich, full one. Then he snapped around and faced Naoki, and he swore that at the Harvest Festival, he'd stand up and declare he was taking the throne and becoming king. He was set on getting that ale on him, so he asked her to set everything up. Naoki swore she'd figure out a way to handle this task, no matter what it took. Rebecca didn't just want to help. She threw herself into it with everything she had. You can always count on Naoki, because there's a reason she's got little sister energy. The brothers look at Naoki and sneer like she's totally useless. She trusts people way too easily, so she can't handle diplomacy. And that means there's no chance she'll ever take a marriage for convenience deal. Even if she's sharp, she's completely out of her depth in politics, even with magic in her hands. The sun's rays hit her skin like a curse she can't survive. Exercise wrecks her body, so she can't fight back. And even kindness weighs her down, keeping her trapped. But Naoki holds the power to save their kingdom, because the bread the brothers craved was baked by her. Next time, they'll spill the whole truth, and trust me, they'll flip their minds about Naoki for good. Brother Takumu and Hibana's training matters a ton, but so does keeping their kingdom thriving. Because when they join forces with Brother Agui and start planting wheat everywhere, they're going to need Naoki's recipes. If they do all of this, their kingdom will surge forward, no stopping it. They jumped right in and started clearing the whole mess after the meal. Lunchtime hit, and the heroes declared it was go time for the measurements. But Hibana pleaded for one more hour. When he asked why, she grinned and said the food was so ridiculously delicious she kept eating. Then her belly ballooned into this massive, out-of-control size. Hiro didn't care about it at all, but she leaned in and demanded that he finally understand her. The hero nodded, then right away he heard her kick off training. He leaned in and asked, "Are you sweating?" She absolutely despised sweating, so she grabbed a towel. An entire hour has basically already slammed by. Then Hibana started to undress, and once she was done, she turned back and declared she was ready. And she sprinted up to the hero, thanking him breathlessly for standing there and waiting. She showed up in front of him completely naked and demanded, "So, can we start already?" The hero stared at her and demanded she stay right where she was. And he swore he'd push everything into overdrive, doing it all faster than ever. Shame crashed down on her as she stood there like that. He jolted in and brushed her back. She let out a loud, shocked squeal. When he asked if she was okay, she shot back that his hands were freezing. But the hero said it felt more like heat scorching her own skin across her back. At Spot C, everything felt wide open and ready to explode. Something about it felt wildly wrong, like the universe had shifted under his feet. When she's so modest it almost hurts to look away. Then he snapped his head back, hit with the truth that he couldn't do it, because that would be downright disrespectful to Hibana, so he clamped down on the thoughts and focused. He jolted her again, blasting a fresh surge of electricity straight through her body. She still couldn't stop flinching from that brutal electric shock. The hero leaned in and told her to hang tight for a bit. She just had to wait. It's insane. She fine-tunes her body to perfection. She had pure, undeniable talent, like it was screaming from her bones. Hibana couldn't believe it. Somehow he understood everything just by the electric current alone. If they nail this right now, the gap between them and Takumu's brother shrinks to almost nothing. Then it's finally her turn to take over the work. She's going to be way stronger within a week, no doubt about it. Even with his weapon, her best strikes won't match Takumu's monstrous power. But if they team up, they can still take it down together. Hibana pointed out it'd be wasteful for her to be the only one using his weapons, and he promised that later, he and his brother Takumu would arm his entire army with them. Turns out he's about to do the exact same thing to men. Turns out it wasn't just weapons for the crowd. He was crafting personal weapons for everyone, too. If they land a lousy weapon, their whole army gets dragged down to the level of the Golden Knights of the Duchy of Canner. And once they start upgrading their weapons, that becomes their whole mission. If they can't steamroll them like Takuma's brother can without any alchemy gear, it's going to get ugly. Hiro dropping that line was awesome, but yeah, it totally makes sense. She swallowed her pride, apologized for snapping earlier, and promised she'd handle everything the right way from here on out. That was a brilliant answer, straight up nailed it. She'd trade anything for Princess Naoki's pasta. Just one bite and her whole body runs on pure energy, and yeah, there's still a little left. But then he snaps, "Don't move." After a while, exhaustion slammed into him so hard he could barely keep going. She thanked him and asked if he was exhausted, and he just shrugged like, yeah, in a way he was. And that was the whole show for today. Now she's free to head straight to her room. And he's not just aiming for good. He demands the work be perfected, all by himself. She told him that the moment he saw her naked, panic hit her hard. Her body felt weird, like something didn't add up. With those words hanging in the air, She turned and stormed out. The hero started wondering what command she'd drop on him next. Next day, a fresh tunnel popped up near the Devil's Forest. They just keep digging and digging, but the tunnel of doom won't ever end. Yeah, it's still close for now, but once you go farther, it'll get brutal, the hero warned, as he ordered drainage and ventilation gear to be set up step by step along the route. And he told them, "All right, now we're grabbing lunch." That food looked so insanely good, I could practically taste it from here. For lunch, Naoki has pasta ready and waiting for them. She told you not to skip seasoning the sauce, so snack time on the street stays easy, says it won't take up much space, then instructs you to wrap the seasoned minced meat with the finished noodles. She even tosses in a pinch of salt, shapes the mix into tiny cutlets, and you're ready to go. Princess Naoki is obsessed with learning. She lives for discovering something new. Hibana took a bite, and it tasted absolutely delicious. That salty taste hits like pure heaven the second your body's wrecked and begging for relief. They kicked off the tunnel digging just yesterday. Since the crack of dawn, all they've done is hack into the ground and dig this tunnel deeper and deeper. So what can he do? If they're packed with stuff to handle today, he'll have that meeting with Prince Agatha, and Hibana will be out training with Takumu. From today, it was just her and Prince Tukumu training. So she pushed herself to train the soldiers too, because they needed to get stronger. Hiro suddenly remembered he was booked solid today, so there was no way he could show up for their training. But he pushes her to spill every detail about how that workout made her feel. Then he snapped a suit into Hibana's hands. Turns out it's the exact same suit, but he insisted it would take at least 2 days. And it all started the moment she said she'd get used to him in a single day, because she's dying to watch her brother's moves clearly. Then she snatched his cheeks in her hands. He told me, "Look closer, and you'll see the circles under my eyes." She asked if he hadn't slept, and Hiro snapped back that he had, but only for 5 miserable minutes. And Hibana couldn't stop smiling, because every bit of what he did was for her. She asked, "Are you seriously trying to bail out of this tunnel right now? It'll collapse. Everything is finally coming together, so we can't leave it like this. If we don't grind today, we'll never finish it on time. They can only pull this off with magic. And since restoring mana takes the same amount of time no matter what, nothing should crumble in the next 2 days. Everything looks powerful, until you line it up with Hibana, and then it's basically nothing. The quicker he finishes, the faster Hibana rockets into true power. It's fine, 1 whole night with 0 sleep, and he still pushed through like nothing could stop him." She smiled, thanked him, and swore she'd treat it like treasure and wear it with extreme care. Hiro cheered her on, told her to drop the shyness and finally spill her feelings, and even though she's still green with plenty of weak spots, he promised he'll step up and handle the rest for now. She'll put the suit through its paces, spot every weak spot, and he'll overhaul it, until she's ridiculously stronger and their whole life changes for the better. And if it's really like that, she's not going to hold back, she'll let it all hit. Hiro sat in the castle, right in front of Agatha. Agatha was so relieved he showed up, and she wasted no time. She demanded that he show her the materials first. This year, they're taking over the fields, so they can feed their people with wheat. They'll have to prove it first, because this gamble isn't about the people at all. It's about how much they're risking for themselves. Right now, there are only 2 kinds of fields out there: privately owned ones and publicly owned ones. Night laborers handle the state fields, and they're not trained professionals, just regular folks who get a quick couple of hours of instruction before they're thrown into it. The rest of the time, they either work the crops or help out with the farming. Most of the time, these soldiers are the 2nd or 3rd sons in their families. Though once in a blue moon, a stranger from another country steps into the ranks. They help keep the kingdom's fields thriving, get paid for it, and when their years run out, they finally clock out and retire. Because the brothers' development plan works, the harvest never slows, and even after paying wages, he's still raking in profit, while landless families get real money to buy normal food and keep dreaming that someday they'll earn their own field. My brother invented this whole system, and now everything's booming. People in the kingdom are sitting pretty with a killer domestic policy. No matter how many times they insist wheat can't grow in those fields, if there's no proof in the past, nobody's going to believe it. And yeah, they've tried to grow wheat again and again, and every single time it failed. So if he brings it up one more time, everyone's gonna panic and nothing will get done. So first, you've gotta prove it works. Show them the win. Trying won't save you. One lousy harvest year and the whole land spirals straight into famine. If they start using state fields and hiring night laborers, everything flips to a whole new story. Because even if it goes wrong, they'll at least scrape together the pay for the nights and nobody's going to starve. And because the hero saved the salt for the right moment, it lands exactly when it matters most. Agatha can't wrap her head around the idea that wheat can actually grow, so she's already hunting for other options. He trusts his own power, and that's what makes him different, because his real job is to ready himself for anything that comes. Since he's got zero objections to the plan, Hero leans in and pushes the conversation forward. Agatha tried to say the same thing, but one nasty problem crashed the moment. These soldiers are refusing to go along with this. They showed up to demand they plant sweet potatoes exactly as the plan said. They didn't want to live with regret, and Agatha practically swore that if they planted sweet potatoes, they'd get a salary no matter what, because even if nothing sprouted, they'd still be paid. What a shame, though. They never even bothered to listen. They cling to each other to survive in this brutal world, fueled by a fierce love for their country and their friends. And when fear of failure hits, money is the last thing on their minds. They're thinking, if we don't plant sweet potatoes, someone's going to starve. It's insanely noble, and it honestly makes you proud. But I'd hate to see them lock themselves into just sweet potatoes this year. First, wheat gets planted in the state fields, and it actually pays off. So everyone gets grain to stash away for next year, when the kingdom-wide wheat harvest plan finally kicks in. And if this doesn't click this year, they're stuck pushing it back by an entire year. The only catch is the yield. Better wheat gives you way more than sweet potatoes. Relying only on sweet potatoes right now is a huge risk. If you keep planting them on the same land, the soil slowly turns infertile and your harvest drops fast. The sweet potato infection is way more terrifying. If it hits, it will wipe out the harvest and slam the whole world into famine. And there's zero promise this won't keep happening, because the hero demands they secure at least 2 staple foods, with wheat sitting at the heart of this kingdom's survival. And losing even a single year will slam the economy with an ugly blow. Sure, they could just command the knights to work, but that would be plain wrong. This kingdom exists only because the people truly love it. And the moment the foundation cracks, all that pent-up anger explodes right out. But if you push them to plant wheat and it actually sprouts, you might be able to sway the people afterward. Still, it's a high-stakes gamble. The folks living here are the kingdom's only true treasure. Lose them, and everything crumbles. It takes a full 3 months for wheat to be harvested, and this tough, cold-loving kind still won't survive the harshest winter. So you've got to plant it within 3 weeks, or the season will shut you out for good. But he's all in on forcing everyone to work, because he's convinced their effort will level up and strengthen his kingdom. So we swing over to Brother Agatha and demanded that he prove his case to them himself. 5 years back, our hero tore across the battlefield with a sword in hand and screams ripping through the air. Then he slammed into a tree. But the second he slammed into the tree, he got blasted backward like he'd hit a wall of steel. The moment they saw him, the workers rushed over and begged him to rest, because just swinging a sword wouldn't make him stronger. The hero figured he'd wake up in some open field surrounded by seeds, but he was starving, and he had to score money fast. Then someone shoved a steaming pile of boiled potatoes into his hands. The boy asked if he was resting. Then the mom's treat appeared in his hands like a little lifeline of comfort. Then he fired up all the other workers, urging them to burst into action too, because they were princes as well. The hero thanked him for the treat, and the guy bolted back to work. Hero and Agatha lean over the edge and watch the whole field unfold beneath them. I wrapped everything up early today. Agatha leaned in and demanded to know why he never dug deeper into it. But he didn't want to interrupt their work, so he gritted his teeth and waited until they were done. Agatha can ring the call. Back to the castle he refuses to step foot in, while the outpost sits waiting. Then prove it with your sincerity, he demanded. Brother Agatha's story was so good it blew me away, yet something about it felt off. But no matter what Agatha tried, she still couldn't win them over, and realized he had to step up and talk them into it himself. He rang the bell, declared, "We're finished," and praised everyone for smashing the job. Enro stormed in and greeted them with a grin, like he owned the moment. The guy warned him, "Don't show up alone," and Hero couldn't pretend he didn't know he was about to break that rule. He wants to talk to the hero because some wild rumors are flying around. Then he demanded even more fresh tools, because the days when they could get by without them were long gone, and they'd better be ready to thank him. The hero nodded along because these new plans actually made sense, unlike the outdated ones. Most of the mined iron had to go into forging the armor, but man, what a shame there was no mine nearby. If he didn't swing the handle he'd grabbed, he'd be stuck using only the very tip of his blade. And he kept wondering when they'd finally get the chance to plant sweet potatoes. He never thought he'd need adventure, so he just stuck to growing wheat. Then he leaned in and said they were going to grow wheat. They've got no choice left, none. The moment it happened, the workers started whispering like something huge just got unleashed. They couldn't wrap their heads around it. Was this really their hero prince? They kept replaying it in their minds again and again. Then Hero 2 stepped up and demanded they listen, because he wanted them to start thinking about growing green onions and wheat. And he snapped at them to quit mumbling and stare closely at the wheat he'd brought. With the right special fertilizer, maybe this time the wheat will finally sprout, because wheat is way more dependable than sweet potato, and it barely has any chance of failing. If everything goes as planned, it'll be ready to bear fruit by winter. The workers huddled up and started wrestling with the idea. She's tiny, so there'll be nothing to eat. They'll swarm and feed like mosquitoes, the guy said. Even here, the prince is lying, maybe eternal. And if the plan plays out, he leans in and asks, "So, do you know what happens when hunger finally hits? Winter might slam in early this year. And if he stopped pulling these strange stunts, they could finally get through it in peace." So he demanded to know why he kept messing with things he didn't even need to touch. Simon might not be a villain, but he refuses to buy into the idea that growing sweet potatoes is the only way out. Yeah, he's a fool, yet unlike the others, he can still be talked around. He's someone I can trust. Any chance I talk to anyone, but him could blow up in my face fast. The hero finally managed to explain why he wanted to grow wheat in the first place. This is how they level up the whole country. When they told him the very same idea still ruled his heart, he snapped back. Sweet potatoes were done, no matter what. This wheat harvest is richer than the sweet potatoes around it, but in its current form it's useless, and that's why the country could slide into decline. And the hero was shaking with fear of it, he admitted. Then he bowed deeply, eyes locked on them, and begged for their trust. They were blown away by the hero's move. His request isn't what they need. At this exact moment, they can't afford it. Now he's stuck bargaining, even though every part of him wants to refuse. Every wish he made and every bit of help he offered pointed to the same truth. He saw them as people who thought just like him. He refuses to fake it. His feelings are his real friends, and he won't betray them. Simon demanded he stop acting childish and finally grow up. His father and grandfather once tried growing wheat too, but they finally saw how hopeless it all was. Then the hero swore those failures would never happen again. After a moment of thinking, Simon finally gave in and trusted him, because of course, he was the one saying it. They'll plant wheat and tell him to lift his head, because if he doesn't, they'll say he looks awful, and either way nobody's beating him here. He grabbed his gratitude and thanked him for it. Simon would have gagged at this, back when this whole mess was still new. Out of nowhere, a furious complaint erupted from behind. The workers refused to grow wheat, because those prints clearly knew nothing about farming. The royal family isn't starving, so he says, and he won't stop until everyone believes him. They don't care what happens to them at all. They'd rather burn their own fields than let anyone use them, so the hero won't stand a chance of getting through to them. If he can't pull this off, the road forward slams shut for him. Simon suddenly roared for everyone's attention, shouting loud enough to cut through the noise. "No, I'm not going to spout nonsense. How can anyone say the hero doesn't get how farming works, or pretend he can't feel the pain regular people live with every day. Everyone around clapped their hands over their ears as Simon's voice blasted at full volume. He made them remember who'd given them that crucial knowledge during the crop failure. The people who helped turn the tide back then. He was the hero. He didn't have Takumu's brother's strength. He didn't have Agatha's brother's brains. So all he had to offer was absolutely nothing this country could use. Since Hiro didn't even realize people were hurting, he didn't have to drag himself through misery with them. But somehow they sweated side by side, clenched their teeth, and pushed forward together, determined to make this country a better place. And when you heard their complaints and offered a way to make things a little better, they dropped their shoulders, Simon said, and told them to check out these iron hoses they'd been given. The hero basically branded himself helpless, then kept wasting time, refusing to do anything at all. He's fighting to shut out the fact that he can't do a damn thing. In this country, there isn't a single decent doctor, and the hero prince is the only one brave enough to treat them. When Simon's mother was struck down by illness, he didn't sleep for 3 straight days and nights. He nursed her with everything he had, and it's only because of him she's alive and well now. If anyone thinks he doesn't care what happens to the people, they're completely out of their minds. It was pure complacency in his mind, because that's all he knew how to do. Simon trusted him because he was a true hero prince, and right there, side by side, they pushed forward, together they tried, together they helped. If Takumu tells him everything's fine, and that wheat beats potatoes, he'll follow him without hesitation. So all they've got left is trusting him. Everyone froze in silence, staring at him, all of them replaying the thought in their heads. The hero knew the moment had come. He had to speak up right now, but the words just wouldn't come. He had no clue what to say next. Yeah, the emotions hit him all at once, and he just couldn't rein himself in. It was the first time anything like this had ever hit him. Then the workers stormed up to him, and they swallowed their pride and apologized for everything they had said. They had it all figured out, but wheat still refused to grow on command. 5 years ago, his younger brother starved to death, and he clung to life by a thread. He still remembers that hell every single day. They were terrified and convinced it was way too shaky to trust. They blamed the hero prince for it, sneered at his efforts, and completely ignored the good he was trying to do. The hero grinned at them and said, "I know exactly what you're scared of, but I'll never let you down." The workers were over the moon, and that night they vowed to plant wheat. Then the hero leaned in and said, "I brought something just for you." He snatched some fresh bread right after the potatoes were harvested. If they plant wheat, they'll rake in fresh harvests, and that means mouth-watering bread for everyone. If you can spot what they're really feeling through all the chaos, then yeah, everything's gonna be okay. He won't let them down. He refused to betray their trust, and to keep everyone calm, he doubled and tripled his precautions, because this time he's going to push himself even harder. Agatha strolls with it down the corridor, and then he grinned and said, "I did great." Hiro said that if it had been him instead of Agatha, he'd have stormed in and convinced everyone by himself. In the end, Hiro talked them around with pure eloquence, and the crazy part is, it would have been better if someone had beaten him instead. If you seize the moment the right way, Simon's loyalty, the one that really matters to the residents, will keep growing stronger every day. Then every other resident will throw their full weight behind Hiro too, and just like that, he'll rise to become king. You didn't like how selfish it sounded, but that's politics for you. Selfishness comes bundled in. And second, this part is absolutely crucial. Agatha swallowed her courage and tried to say it. He was terrified of something, deep down, in the middle of being a hero. The hero pressed again, demanding to know if Agatha was truly terrified of him, and he swore it with full conviction. The hero grinned and said he was happy with what he was doing, because for years he'd been saving and helping all kinds of people. If you zoom out and see the whole country, these problems shrink into nothing, but put them all together, and it turns into a massive, unstoppable force. Their trust, yeah, that's the whole reason everything works. People believe every word he drops, and they fall in line behind him. Trust isn't something you grab overnight. It's a priceless treasure you earn, and it's the strongest weapon you can wield. If the hero climbs the throne, he'd better remember this. His warning about complacency didn't just fall on deaf ears. It flipped straight into dangerous trust. If he's got it, this country could flip the whole game overnight. Everything he's done so far wasn't for nothing. It all mattered. All that effort paid off. Because deep down, Hero had been waiting all this time just to hear these exact words spoken to him. Agatha pulled all of this just to figure out what weapon he had before he became king. Because alchemy isn't magic, it's just a tool. And if he wants to change the country, he has to think beyond it. What terrified him most was knowing Hero's trust could change everything. And Agatha grabbed his heart to remind him, never forget that. If he forgets, then forgiveness dies. And that's when he moves in and takes this country for himself. Brother Agatha clocked him at last. Hero's finally in his debt. They want to stand as they are. No hiding, no shame, just full, fearless freedom. To earn these people's trust, he'll stay exactly who he is. No disguises, no lies. And if he truly loves his country, he'll reshape it from the inside out. On the job site, the hero strode through the field and shoved leaflets into every worker's hands. But the crowd stared at them like, wait, what does this even say? The very next day, they tore into every field and planted wheat like it was do or die, while he personally took over the sowing, making sure the technique was perfect and the soil got the fertilizer it needed to really take off. This year he's driving the process, but next year he'll step back and train the village people to take his place. Because one rundown won't cut it, so he breaks everything down and hands out clear instructions. Simon hit the bell and announced, loud and proud, that the work for the day was finally done. They pushed themselves to the limit, and a few of them even thought, let's pray for success. The hero warned that cold weather can ruin wheat, but if it's kept in low temperatures, it can actually thrive. The workers were stunned. Turns out their hero understood every single thing. Simon demanded to know if he really had to march back to the castle. The hero admitted with a tired laugh that his life right now is total chaos, non-stop, hectic, and jam-packed. And that comforting feeling hits. Little by little, the tunnel keeps getting pushed forward, while the wheat fields keep swelling and growing. Just wait, before winter even shows up, the fields will bloom with gorgeous ears of grain. Everyone cheered because they were finally about to grow a whole feast of tasty wheat. As soon as the wheat sprouts, the entire country will light up with smiles. And the hero can't wait for that day to finally arrive. The hero sat in his office, and the dinner bell was already calling his name. Then Hibana rapped on his door, kicked it open, and slipped into his office. Right as she barely stepped in, her legs gave out and she crumpled to the floor. The hero sprang to his feet and shot back. Are you okay? She apparently blacked out for a bit from sheer exhaustion. Hibana got absolutely wrecked again, but this time, she finally landed the hook on Takuma. The hero started rubbing on an ointment, and the relief hit her fast, like instant peace settling into her body. Pain tore through her, so she begged, please be gentle with me. The hero shoved it in place on her back and told her, right then and there, to take it and apply it to the front herself. She asked if the front needed a smear too, and he told her, that part only happens after the wedding. A royal family member dropped the kind of bombshell nobody saw coming, and she'd been counting down to it like it was destiny. And since she hooked him, they just might finally have a shot at winning. In that acceleration burst, her gear gave that punch all it had. She'd connect hard, right on target. That was already awesome. So Hero leaned in and asked if she'd spotted anything else. She just smiled and said Takumu had perfect coordination. The first time she tried fighting him, her arms and legs locked up like they were frozen. Then day 3 of training finally cracked her open just enough to land a single hit. And if she keeps going, in the last 3 days she'll have him beat for good. It sounded like pure victory, and Hero couldn't stop dreaming of the moment she'd finally win. Then it hit him. She told him that among the Golden Knights, 8 couldn't beat her, so he blurted, what about the other 4? She figured their power was basically neck and neck. Then she realized the knights were matched sword for sword too, except 8 of them stood out as monsters. If he had a sword in hand, she just knew he could win too. Turns out even the Golden Knights have ranks, and he quizzed her on how Takuma stacks up against the top of the bunch. Even if they swung holy swords, he could still wipe out 5 of them, but the last 3 would break him. Those three holy swords aren't just weapons, they're special. Maybe if Brother Takumu wielded the magic sword Hiro forged, he could finally crush the three sacred blades. Hibana shrugged and said, maybe I'd have one or maybe I'd have lost. Until today, Hiro knew his brother was strong, but he had no idea if that power held up on the world stage. Though one thing was clear, his strength was just as mighty as the Golden Knights. If they can pull Takuma into their plan, their odds of winning skyrocket. This country's biggest nightmare is that as soon as its neighbors catch wind of its wealth, they'll barrel in and invade. In moments like this, the smartest move isn't to throw punches, it's to find another way. Yet the people begging for victory at any cost far outnumber the ones who want to avoid the war. They'll only swing into a fight as a total last resort, because peace is on the table too, and they swear it's smarter to keep an ace up your sleeve. If they can raise Takumu to stand toe-to-toe with the three holy swords, and unleash Hibana to blow past him, then this whole country might finally have two people strong enough to match them and crush the Golden Knight Order. Hibana snapped that it was pure arrogance to think just the two of them could take down the Golden Knights, and they'd need one more fighter. No debate. Yeah, it'll be you, Hiro, Hibana said. The hero refused, because even with a top-tier sword in his hands, he still wouldn't claim he was the best. Hibana got it. His fighting style would let him match their level, and yeah, that was enough. He might have been able to, but it wasn't worth it. Hiro shot back. I mean, it'd be awesome to finally test how strong alchemical silver really is in a fight. Then he begged her to stay in her clothes and not change them in his room. She demanded to know what was wrong with it, and she was already thinking ahead, because down the line, they'd probably end up living together. She was stubborn as hell, but when she didn't have a single question about the gear, he snapped that she shouldn't waste time, then pressed her on what had happened. Hibana didn't ask for much. She had just one request. She wants him to name her sword. It's the crucial gift from the one man she'd bet her life on, and calling it just a magic sword feels downright heartbreaking. He forged this sword just for her, then leaned in and asked her if he could be the one to name it himself. But that's exactly what Hibana had him call himself. No questions, no hesitation. When he demanded an answer, she just softened up and hit him with pure sentimentality. But no matter what, it still doesn't click for him. Yet if it'll make her smile, he'll find a way and make it happen. Then he snapped his eyes to Hibana. Hibana stared down at her sword when, click, something snapped inside the hero's mind. Then he leaned in and said, Hanabi. So yeah, this sword is getting a name, Hanabi. He told her Hanabi means sparkling fire flowers that bloom in the sky, and that it's absolutely breathtaking. Hibana even sparkles when she swings her sword, so he figured the name fit perfectly. After she got the full explanation, she snapped her gaze to her sword. The sky burst in blazing colors, and it sounded so heartbreakingly romantic that she just had to see it for herself. But the hero shot back, no way, this isn't impossible. So once she beats Takuma in their duel, they'll throw a huge celebration that night and light up the sky with fireworks. If she loses, that's it. Nothing moves forward and they'll tear into every mistake. But Hibana swore she'd never lose. Still, the way she fought without even knowing what the sword's name meant just felt painfully sad. 3 days are all that stand between them and the fight. So betting on a massive, complicated fireworks show right now would be pure stupidity. Even so, he's got this. He's determined to push through and earn Hibana's admiration, because when she watches the fireworks, she outshines every single spark in the sky. Then out of nowhere, she snapped that they couldn't waste a second, and she dropped to the floor and started pounding out push-ups. Hiro Aster tells himself, don't go too far, don't overdo it. The day of Hibana versus Takumu, the duel everyone's been waiting for, finally hits. Prince Hiro strode in, then the rest hurried right behind him. People were staring at Princess Nayuki, like it was the first time they'd ever seen someone that legendary. Nayuki stared them down and flashed them a cheeky wink. The moment they heard it, the soldiers instantly cringed and felt their pride collapse. They all screamed her name as one. Then Rebecca snapped her eyes to them out of nowhere. She was exactly where she belonged, and it showed. Takumu was braced in the arena when Hiro and Hibana finally climbed in, too. The hero still remembers the day Hibana and Takumu clashed for the very first time. But today, it's a dead-even showdown. Both of them have the same shot at victory. Takumu and Hiro's brutal showdown is about to be watched by Agata. This duel is about to kick off. Hiro's knight Hibana steps in to fight. This isn't some training spar. It's a brutal duel with real blades, and the only way to win is to land one clean strike. The loser gives up the throne succession rights, and the second Prince of Agatha has already done the same. So the winner just steps right into the throne, and he immediately turns to the room demanding, "Anyone object?" The hero didn't even flinch, and Takumu didn't hesitate at all. No objections, not even a flicker. Then he handed his fate to his sword, and the hero swore his destiny to that same blade, the sword his knight relies on. Everything was set, and he leaned in, asking if his brother was ready to roll. He told her, "Wait just a second." He demanded the hero and his knight take this duel and win it. Everyone snapped in shock because Takumu almost never chooses to throw in the towel. It sounded like they'd already worked this out, so Kumu straightened up and made it crystal clear. He wasn't backing down. He demanded that he prove his beliefs in combat, and if he couldn't outmatch him, then he'd be crushed. Then the hero's views will shrink into nothing and fade into insignificance. So yeah, vanishing is the safest move for everyone, because it's better for him and it protects the country too. Then he'll rise up and take the throne for himself, becoming king of the whole country. The hero just gave a quick, decisive nod. But if he beats Takuma, he'll finally admit his beliefs are right, and he'll hand Takuma the subordinates he carved out for himself. He told everyone to stare in close and watch every tiny detail. After all, he'll come at his opponent with everything he's got. No jokes, no mercy, full seriousness. So once they overtake him, he'll finally recognize the hero. Hearing that, the other soldiers erupted in one loud roar and started cheering for Commander Takuma. Every single one of them who follows Takumu is aching to witness his power firsthand. They're all cheering for Takuma, buzzing with excitement because they're finally about to watch him go all out in a real fight. So he can't stop dreaming of a power that will finally outgrow him. The hero stared straight at Hibana, like the whole world just paused. Then he swung around to Takumu and said, "I've heard every word you said, now it's simple. All that's left is for you to win." The hero tried to reach Hibana, but she never picked up. Then he clamped a hand on her shoulder, and fear shot through her like lightning. He flashed a grin and asked her, "Are you scared?" She straight up admitted she was terrified, but once the fright hit, it burned through all that fear. And just like that, everything went back to normal. She puts on a brave act, and that fake confidence actually steals her heart. Hibana's totally leveled up. She's grown into someone new. Hyrule demanded she storm out there and come back wearing victory. She nodded at him, then launched herself toward the arena. Takumu challenged her and demanded she prove, right there, that she was superior. Even with her new strength, she still couldn't stand against him. She'd be powerless if it were just her. But together with the hero, they'll lock in victory and never let it slip. After those words hit the air, the two of them snapped into a ready stance, eyeing each other like the fight was about to explode. Agatha slammed her declaration down and kicked off the duel. Hibana surged forward in an instant, slamming into attack. She hit the accelerator and let the power surge take over. It supercharges your brain and body like a live wire, sharpening your dynamic vision and making your reflexes hit faster and cleaner. She lunges first, and Takumu's totally exposed right now. If this doesn't land, she's not going to survive the next blow. Hibana struck in a blur, but Takumu still juked out of the way in time. Before this, she could only reel in her brother, but now she's tracking every single one of his moves. It's not just the hero staring. Everyone else is glued to it too. Hibana looks cool in Miyuki's eyes, and Takumu, although he stepped back, continues to dodge. She cranked up the pressure with every single strike, driving harder and harder until there was no room left to breathe. Suddenly, Takumu slipped up behind her and planted himself in a ready stance. He thrust the sword at her and held it there until she snapped around to face him, but he barely managed to block the blow at the last second. She snapped her sword up in time and turned the attack aside at the last second, and she halted him cold, using the hilt of her sword. Takumu already figured this was where the story finally ends. But the second Hibana touched down on the arena's edge, she vanished from Takumu's sight. She snapped into a blind spot in an instant, so when she struck from there, the attack wouldn't show up on anyone's radar. She trailed right behind him, already convinced she could reach out and grab him, and she boldly swung her blade right into his back. But right when the sword swung down, Takumu vanished out from under it like a ghost. Turns out he popped up right behind Hibana, even though she disappeared from view. From where she stood, he clocked the path her next move would carve through the air, so he wound up and threw a punch at her. That sword was already flying straight at Hibana. The hero snapped at Hibana to move faster, like now. She swung to stop the strike, and snapped the sword straight in half. The sword's tip streaked past the Ku's face, and the whole scene froze in stunned silence. He let out a smug grin, then got blasted straight through the chest. Takumu crumpled to the ground as blood blasted from his body, and then bam! Hibana Clifford took the crown as the winner. Hero bolted straight to the arena the second he heard, desperate to catch sight of his brother. He marched right up to him, yanked out a flask, and poured its contents straight onto Takumu's wound. He got healed on the spot. Then the wound stitched itself closed right before our eyes. The hero leaned in and demanded to know if he was really okay. Staring at the healed wound, he realized it looked like straight-up magic. The cuts look closed on the surface now, but he's not out of the woods. He still needs to rest for the next few days, because these injuries won't fully heal until 3 days pass. Hibana's sword was battered, and her armor was worn down to the edge of breaking after that brutal fight. But they ended up being rock solid and totally dependable. Then he pushed himself to his feet, forced to admit he got absolutely smashed. He couldn't stop picturing what would happen if a magic blade smashed into a regular one, so he held back during the duel, until Hibana's counterattack hit harder than anything he imagined. The instant he snapped her strike aside, the fight's result was sealed. Then he whipped around to face the crowd, people who had just witnessed every single moment, and he demanded, "So, am I supposed to look like a genius for making it easier for my opponent to win, or am I the idiot?" With the sword and gear hero forged, Hibana turned the tables and finally met the fight on equal ground. With belief in this power, you can hand the fight to a hero without fear. Takumu grabbed his attention and demanded he level them up with his power, because only for his sake, they'd wield it for good. Then the hero shot to his feet and swore he'd make it happen. He swore to Takumu and his fighters that he'd use these powers to bring the whole country back to life. So he begs them to take what he knows and train harder, until they're stronger than they've ever been. The crowd erupted with pure delight, roaring his words back at him like thunder. Takumu pushed for Hero to be congratulated for snagging the title of the next king, and sure, there'd be no prize, but it didn't mean you couldn't celebrate a little. Then the hero clocked it. Hibana was still sitting there unmoving. Then you stepped up to her. He slid into the seat beside her, breathing out thanks for that victory like it mattered more than anything. Staying alive felt weirdly impossible for her. She'd already resigned herself to dying, and honestly, she got insanely lucky when she managed to stop that blow at the last second. But Hero snapped that it wasn't luck, because luck didn't rescue her at all. She powered up, and now the Night Hero's demands are on her. No excuses, all expectations. She couldn't help it. This news made her grin with pure joy. People burst into action, hauling in tables and setting everything up for what was coming. Intekumu declared a feast and let them gorge themselves, eat as much as their hearts desired. The maids hauled in a towering pile of beer, and dumped down plates piled with boiled potatoes like a mountain. The more they stuffed themselves, the faster their appetite vanished. That long-awaited moment finally arrived, but the potatoes were so bland they practically tasted like nothing. The heroes so desperate for answers that they even wish they had salt right now. They should have hammered that out before planting potatoes, but wheat and potatoes both had to be grown. So Nayuki and Rebecca sprinted right up to them. The two of them wrapped Hibana in cheers, congratulating her for the win. Even after winning, joy won't touch her. Her heart stays cold, because if this were an ordinary sword, she would have lost for sure. Even if that's true, I'm telling you, next time under the same rules, they're taking the win for sure. Nayuki lit up and said Hibana's fighting was amazing, then turned to him and thanked him for the compliment. By then, the potatoes were completely wiped out. Every last one was gone. Even though it didn't taste good, It still crushed me that it was over. It felt weird, because the hero suddenly asked for seconds, like he wanted to cook even more. Then Naoki told Rebecca not to stress, and Rebecca finally let them bring in something. Half the potatoes were hauled off, to get everything ready for Takumu's victory celebration. Naoki was genuinely praying they'd love every single thing. The hero froze in shock the second she lifted the lid, and I opened it up and saw real croquettes inside. She cooked it herself, because that's the exact dish Hiro told her about earlier. Takumu strode up to the table, eyes locking onto the mouth-watering look and smell that practically dared him to taste it. Agatha had never laid eyes on anything like it, because this thing was made from potatoes. Hiro insisted its way better to chow it down with your bare hands. Then he grabbed the croquette with a napkin, leaned in, and bit off a juicy piece. The oil spilled out like a waterfall, and every bite hit so hard the edges cracked loudly. Pure delicious chaos for them. Takumu leaned in and asked Naoki if she'd cooked up this insanely delicious treat herself. Takumu's praise lit up her heart, and pure joy flooded her, and Rebecca couldn't help but smile, seeing Naoki this happy. Those potato croquettes came out absolutely perfect. When the housewives salted the goat meat, the extra fat piled up, and she grabbed it, cooked it with a pinch of salt. She mashed the potatoes to a smooth, crumbly dream, tossing in salt, meat, and milk until they turned soft. Then she cracked in eggs, added flour, and dried the bread down into crispy crumbs. Making something that delicious with second-rate ingredients is no walk in the park. But once you tell people about it, they'll light up and cheer. She battered the iron pan with a mountain of oil, and since the city had barely any iron pans at all, she had to smash through a ton of goat meat just to get enough fat to fry. And she straight up admitted it works great even without frying. Rebecca yanked Naoki into her arms on the spot, and snapped that even a king shouldn't let a princess feel heartbroken. He scribbled right away that extracting oil from plants was surprisingly easy, but iron, that situation was way more complicated. In this country, mines are missing, and because of that, iron is running so low it's practically vanished. From now on, everything's about to get stronger, because if war's coming, we're going to need a whole mountain of iron. One simple way to get it is to import from nearby countries. But if they try to buy huge amounts of iron and hit resistance, they could get burned by other nations that see those shipments as a hostile move. If a war ever erupted, he'd secretly scramble for a massive stash of iron first, while, deep down, he told himself. Naoki begged him to stop worrying. He shot back with an apology, insisting it wasn't the dish at all. It was the iron requirement, and he swore they'd land it soon. And then boom, iron pots and sharp knives finally find their way into people's homes. It looks like the heroes are cooking up something that should be impossible. Today, the hero finally became king. So Agatha grabbed him and begged him not to rile up both Takuma and himself. Clink, clink. He raised his glass and swore a promise to Agatha. Then they charged right back into their feast. Naoki shocked everyone by pulling off that ridiculously complex dish like it was nothing. She doesn't just know her stuff. She's got the perfect way of saying it, and you can tell the second you meet her. She's a total bookworm. She does everything she can to help, and then Hiro leans in and asks, "Should I step away from the country's political mess?" But Agatha didn't even hesitate. She snapped that she was against it. The hero got it. He was trying to keep her out of the spotlight too, just like him. For her sake, he refused to drag his sister into this, but he still couldn't help wondering if letting her play the role of only cooking was truly the right move. Then Naoki burst up to them, running straight toward them, and she told him she'd said all she needed. She was wiped out, and she was heading back to her place. Suddenly, she backed up, straight onto the glass shattered under her feet. She totally slipped on it. Hiro and Agatha shot their hands out the second they got to Agatha, grabbing for her right away. Right then, they slammed into action and caught her mid-fall, stopping her from hitting the ground. They stared at each other, totally shocked, and then the whole crew erupted into laughter. Just then, Rebecca came sprinting up and demanded, "Are you okay?" But the brothers had already hauled her back in time so she didn't fall. Even though they'd never exactly seen eye to eye, something about it still felt weirdly heavy in the air. Hanging out together was an absolute blast. Hiro nodded along, because even though Naoki had been their go-between for ages, they barely ever got together. Naoki then puffed her cheeks and complained that things were just too messed up between them. She kept trying to get along with both of them so they could finally become the same. He apologized for this, because she constantly had to be a bridge between them. Agatha told him he had to head back to the castle, because the work wasn't done yet. Hiro leaned in and told Agatha and Naoki to hang on for a bit, because he was about to show them something wild. They couldn't stop wondering what he'd cooked up. The hero stepped into the arena and roared for everyone in the crowd to hear him. And then he declared he'd cooked up a special surprise for the showdown between Hibana and Takumu tonight, and he demanded they turn their eyes to the flag. Then he bolted backstage, snatched the chain, and shot the current straight through it. Suddenly, the cannons behind the scenes loaded and fired into the sky, and shells tore across the dark sky like blazing streaks, one after another. They erupted into a massive, jaw-dropping fireworks show that lit up the whole sky. Even the folks at the feast and the plain peasants all saw the same thing. Fireworks lit up the sky, even past the kingdom's walls. That fiery flower Hibana promised is bursting open in the sky right now, lighting up the night with fireworks. It was so stunning, I couldn't even breathe. Everyone stared in shock as the sky suddenly lit up. Takumu was so shocked, he couldn't even process what he'd just done. Agatha had never, ever laid eyes on anything like what she was seeing right then, and Naoki can't stop wanting to see it again. The guards just sat there, totally stunned, as the fireworks lit up the sky. The whole place buzzed with a warm, happy vibe. If nobody loved the fireworks, it would have been a total waste. But the moment they lit up, it didn't matter anymore, because it was obvious everyone was cheering and smiling. Hibana stepped up to Hiro, her voice full of awe, and told him the fireworks were breathtaking, and she'd never ever forget them. He admitted making it was a total nightmare, so he's over the moon that everyone loved it. So Hibana's sword got its name from something drop-dead gorgeous. But the sword's owner is drop-dead gorgeous, so stunning she outshines the fireworks themselves. She lit up with pure, uncontrollable joy. She stared at the name and felt utterly unworthy of it for now, and she'll keep chasing that moment, until the day he finally blows her away with a fireworks show even more breathtaking than the last. Hiro's got his hopes pinned on this one, because something big is coming. Hibana suddenly remembered the promise he'd made, get the wheat, and he'd throw a harvest festival. And at that festival, he was going to announce his coronation. For the very first time in this land's history, they're throwing a massive feast, rows of bread, ale, and seafood spread across the tables. So this holiday is going to blow everyone away with fireworks lighting up the sky, and it'll make every single person cheer. It's sweet as sugar, but Hiro had no choice. He had to do it. By the time the festival hits, they're sitting on a mountain of millet, while a tunnel to the sea gets carved out, unlocking salt at last, and finally, seafood on their plates. They're about to strike it big and get way richer. When winter finally hits, they'll have more than enough food to dig in right then, and even more to save for later. This is the future he's been burning to hand them all. It all sounded insanely awesome, and that's exactly why he believes just breathing isn't enough. Happiness isn't a fantasy, and he wants everyone at the Harvest Festival to feel that truth, too. He forged a goal they could share, and he'll chase it to the very end, no matter what gets in his way. And only by pushing himself day after day can he bring real happiness to everyone. The fireworks lit up the night, and Hibana stared in awe, then wondered if those perfect circles and blazing colors were crafted through some kind of chemistry. Hiro shot back, "It's just chemistry." The shape was locked in by a big circle, packed with tiny powder balls, and once those special metals were ignited, they'd pull out a blazing, fiery color. He went all in with the fireworks, and now he's gearing up to top it all for the Harvest Festival. It's totally possible to get through the winter, but with food running out, the Harvest Festival hasn't been held in 20 years. Hibana told him it would be fine, because if she could get to enjoy his fireworks again, she'd give it her all too. The hero asked if she was full, and she snapped back, "No way, I'm hungry all the time." Then gushed that Princess Naoki's croquettes were absolutely delicious. Then he leaned in and asked what dessert she was craving. The second she heard the word dessert, Her whole face lit up like a firework. All that was out there was weed, everywhere. No break, no mercy. It was no ordinary farm. It was an experimental one. Hibana couldn't stop wondering what amazing thing they could whip up using wheat. But when they pressed him, he snapped back that it wasn't just wheat. There was way more going on, and he leaned in and demanded she open the door. Far off, she spotted giant glass buildings towering in the distance. They looked weird from the outside, but once you step inside, get ready. Things get way more shocking. They barged inside and spotted giant fruits towering everywhere. It was a juicy fruit everyone knew as melon. The scent was so sweet, it made your head spin like crazy. This rare fruit comes from the Far East, and getting your hands on it here is a total nightmare. Yet somehow melons themselves don't cost an arm and a leg. But he somehow pulled off a crazy feat, getting those seeds by a totally unusual method. She demanded to know what other method he was hiding, and honestly, it sounded wildly suspicious. Then she sucked in a breath, and her mouth immediately started to water just from the smell alone. These fruits must cost a fortune, because it was the first time in her whole life she'd ever tasted a sweetness this unreal. Then her stomach growled like it was ready to start a fight. So yeah, no choice at all, because sweets aren't something they can afford to enjoy on a regular basis in their country. She couldn't wait a second and pushed. Is there any way we can do this right now? She shot back that she could pick anybody, so she grabbed the biggest one without hesitation. Then I looked around and realized there wasn't a single patch of land here, yet somehow you could still grow fruit anyway. He scrawled an explanation and made it crystal clear why it was called hydroponics. Cultivation is basically all about water and fertilizers, because in farming, the only way anything grows is through fertile soil, and she just assumed that was the only option. And when she demanded to know why nobody outside could spot them, he leaned in and said it was just a precaution. People act like hydroponic gear is too complicated to build, like he must have pulled it off with nothing but alchemy. The hero shuts himself away when it all gets too heavy. Before he even started growing them, he figured this plan would reel in foreign money, and he couldn't wait to hand them out as gifts for big, unforgettable dates. Hibana was grinning because Hero let her try something this delicious, and she swore she'd keep it secret from everyone. And she picked the sweetest looking one, right here, like she already had the night's sixth sense. After she caught the scent, her smile lit up. This smelled incredible, and she straight up asked if Hero would be there too. Suddenly he blurted, "1 for 2 isn't enough, is it?" And he pushed for them to eat every last bite. She lit up and gladly agreed right away. Then the hero snatched a knife and split the melon right down the middle. After I pulled out the seeds, I split them into 4 equal parts. And finally that melon was safe to bite into. No worries, no trouble at all. As soon as it got sliced open, that sweet melon aroma hit even harder, flooding the air like a delicious punch. The hero grabbed her attention, told her to put the piece in her hands, and then bite it with fearless confidence. She snatched one piece, poised to bite down, and finally, she sank her teeth into that melon, and it immediately let out a savage howl at how it tasted. The flavor hit like pure candy, rich, sweet, and ridiculously juicy. And the second you bite, sweet juice bursts out everywhere. It hit my tongue like silk, so soft it melted away. The outer layer stood rock solid. The hero snapped, "Don't touch it, eat the inside, not the peel." Even after all this time, it's still not over. There's still way more left than you'd think. They kept digging in, scarfing down every last bite until the melon was finally gone. And then they devoured every last bite. Nothing was left. It tasted so mind-blowing, she practically swore it was straight-up fruit from paradise. And she blurted out that she'd never been happier than the moment she decided to follow him, though hearing it still stung a bit. She's itching for everyone else to taste the delicious treat. But if the hero ever found out, he'd instantly feel uneasy about it. He was toying with the idea of the yo as a prize, handing it out to anyone who proved themselves, whether they'd won battles or mastered the land, like that was supposed to light a fire under people. But honestly, Hibana looked like she'd go for the kill over this melon, and the hero practically had to tell her, "Don't joke like that." And yeah, she absolutely devoured it like she'd been starving for it her whole life, because it was the first time she'd ever tasted something like that. Today, she laid eyes on the most beautiful thing human life has to offer. And then she tasted something so delicious, it nearly knocked her breath away. You told yourself it wouldn't sting for once, then you handed it to her like a reward. Then she'll have to push herself to the limit to earn that reward. Then she caught a scent, drifting in from miles away. She leaned in, sniffed the air, and asked what that awful smell was, then jabbed a finger toward the building. He shot back that there was something there, something truly special. He cracked the door open, and right inside, barrels piled up everywhere. Now's the perfect moment. Crack it open and dive straight into what's inside. The air smelled amazing, almost exactly like alcohol. And that's how they ended up in a cellar drenched in pure, aching melancholy. He'd degrown a mountain of melons, but he couldn't eat them all, and the scraps were never enough to use as fertilizer. So he hit on a plan: make melon tincture. Even if it tasted heavenly, he couldn't exactly flaunt it to the people, and that's why Hibana was shocked, because at first, he'd even wanted to throw away all that deliciousness. She got it all sure, but still, damn, it hurt to see. She couldn't stop loving this melon. She was totally obsessed. He can keep the tincture locked away in the cellar year after year, and once he's finally sure every drop tastes right, he'll step up and unveil it to everyone. Hibana had been holding her breath, waiting for that day to finally arrive. Then she leaned in and asked to try the tincture straight from the source. Yeah, Hiro was right on the money, but he told her, if you don't like it, don't drink it, because he'd tweak that tincture until it matched his own taste. Only Hibana was stubborn enough to go for it. The moment she took a bite, sweet melon exploded on her tongue, rich, concentrated, and absolutely heavenly. To brew the tincture, they smashed the melon to pulp, then let it ferment for a while until it transformed. It was sweet as candy, and it was the first time in her whole life she dared to sip sweet alcohol, then just kept drinking it like she could never get enough. Making sweet alcohol is a nightmare because every bit of sweetness gets burned away when sugar turns into alcohol. Unless that melon is loaded with sugar, then the yeast fermentation can be stopped early to keep the drink sweet. Turns out he didn't just whip up something sweet. He brewed a whole tangled sweet tincture, and she couldn't wait to get her hands on it and down it until she was satisfied. And she leaned in and asked, "Can I get another mug?" He told her she could drink if she wanted, and then he shrugged it off like his words didn't matter. She kept on chugging, like she wasn't stopping for anything. They clinked glasses, mug after mug, drowning the room in cheers. So they keep knocking back drink after drink until the bottle's gone. He never once imagined that this small move would explode into a full-blown disaster. Hibana dropped onto the hero's shoulder, locked eyes with him, and told him just how stunning they were. He never imagined he'd chug an entire mug. She realized his skin was burning hot too. The liquor tastes sweet and slides down easy, but it hits way harder than ale, because all that sugar gets burned into alcohol, and you never caught that detail until now. No matter how much she chugged, it still wasn't enough, too much. Then he snapped, asking if she could slip away, go lie down and sleep it off. Iben paused for a beat, then locked eyes with him and studied him closely. Then she traced his lips with her fingers. She'd been holding back that question for ages, dying to finally ask. Why won't he take her hand? She looked him dead in the eyes, told him she loved him, and laid every secret right on the table. He blurted out, asking if she meant that moment she changed clothes in front of him, and he couldn't shake the thought that she didn't see him as a guy at all. But the truth hit hard. She wasn't immune to shame either. Then he leaned in and demanded she say it straight to his face. She just couldn't make her hands move. She couldn't bring herself to invite him, and she leaned in, asking Hiro straight up if he felt anything for her at all. He told her, "I'm crazy about you. You're my dear friend and I genuinely love you." She asked if she was just another friend to him, and he admitted he felt nothing more. After lounging there for a while, he finally admitted there was definitely a little of that going on. She's stunning and totally charming, so he has to clamp down on himself with every ounce of willpower, but he's not even supposed to say stuff like that. Except tonight, he's drunk. Hibana leaned in close and asked, "Are you really okay with this?" She's demanding he claim her fully, all the way, no holding back. The hero swallowed hard, then blurted out, "I want that too." But deep down she knows it. There's no way it can happen. He swore he'd reshape this country and hunt down the strength he needed to bring back his first love. Hibana leaned in and demanded, "Be honest. Do you really love Princess Miri more than me?" And honestly, Hiro had no idea. That's how deep his feelings ran for her. Hibana was so mortified by what he said that his face burned with embarrassment. And she shot back, "Why not?" She'd already made it crystal clear she didn't want to be queen, and she could just be his handy placeholder. He remembered it all too well, and that was his own problem to carry, because somehow his feelings for her had only grown stronger than anything he'd ever felt for his sister. He feared that if he let himself fall for someone else, the memory of his sister would get swallowed up inside him. Then he realized he'd been talking nonstop lately, and he knew he really shouldn't keep running his mouth like that. So what did he even do for her? Any of it? He'd already given up completely. Ibana stared him down, eyes locked, and listened like it mattered more than breath. When the earth yanks away from under his feet, doubt crushes his heart, and it turns out he's already shattered the trust of everyone who ever believed in him. Maybe they should bolt together somewhere safe and finally face their feelings head-on. He flat-out declared himself a total weakling, and it absolutely disgusted him to the core. Maybe Hibana had already started losing faith in him the moment he looked her in the eye. But then, out of nowhere, he spotted her scrambling up to him, arms reaching out like she meant to grab him right there. She slammed into him with a hug and told him with absolute certainty that the truth was the exact opposite. He finally let her glimpse the weaknesses he'd never once admitted before, and it felt completely unfair. He apologized to her, and when she didn't hate him, the storm finally died down in his chest. Then he slapped the truth on his own chest and called himself a total egoist. Because of her, he finally knew exactly what he had to do. He vowed to rebuild this country and bring Princess Emily back. After all that, Ibana finally grabbed his attention and demanded, "Give me my chance." He didn't even hesitate. He nodded and agreed, and as long as she stayed by his side, he believed every obstacle would land right within his grasp. Then tell them to forget everything that just happened today. She couldn't do a thing. She was so drunk she could barely even think, and everything he heard back then was just drunken rambling, all delirious nonsense. And right then, she started turning everything off, like it was undeniable proof. Then she toppled into his lap and without a word, drifted off into sleep. But Hiro will never, ever be able to forget this. Tell me, how could you ever forget what your girlfriend said? She started charging through the tunnel toward the castle, Hibana riding on her back. Hiro will never forget this day. He just plays dumb and pretends he did. And he swore to her that when he finally comes back, he'll bring his promise and return his sister. Then he'll lock in and really, truly start thinking hard about where their relationship is going. 2 months have blown past since Ibana snatched victory. Winter's creeping in, and everything's suddenly sprinting at full speed. Plans to pump the country's wealth and bulk up the army are suddenly picking up speed. The hero showed up to see him and fired off a question. "How are you feeling?" The man in that room was his father, trapped in bed, IV drip hooked up, like his life was on a countdown. He dropped into the chair and kept talking, spelling out his plan to cook up yet another version of the new drug. And while the father is out cold, the entire country flips its world upside down. And not too long ago, they carved out a secret tunnel that dives straight into the sea. All the brothers in Habana huddled in that tunnel, staring hard at the light spilling in from the inside. The moment they lay eyes on this magnificence, their breath vanishes. Deep in the devil's forest, even a magic lamp can work wonders. They busted their butts for this, and they pulled off something so wild it didn't even feel real. After they finally wrapped up the work, they rushed up to the hero and demanded, "Tell us, was there really a sea behind this tunnel, even though it wasn't a cave at all?" So he swore it was all true. If you hit the sea, you'd reach the end of everything, and compared to that lake, the waters were packed with way more fish. When the expedition crew hauled back from the sea, chaos erupted. Fresh fish and piles of shellfish came with them. But it still wasn't enough, so he snatched a cart and hauled even more. Agatha demanded to know where the horses pulling the cart had vanished to. Then the hero jabbed a finger at Takuma and Hibana and shouted that they had someone faster and stronger than any horse. They bolted forward at full speed right away. Hibana couldn't stop smiling, She said this was top-tier training. Takumu nodded along with her and sprinted toward Ranni's as fast as he possibly could. Agatha's jaw drops every now and then. The hero isn't even sure they have a shot at stopping them. But even so, those beasts are pure glory, hauling that cart from the castle for miles and miles. The cart barely even budges. No wobble, no rattling wheels, and not a single drop of power is wasted. "Look, this road inside the tunnel is smooth as glass," Hiro said, then pointed out that those tire covers help the wheels run cleaner and cut down friction, so the drive gets way more efficient. He figured the cart, the combined power of the two, and the road conditions worked together just right, letting them roll along at roughly 50 kilometers per hour. Agatha then nodded and said those carriages would be exactly the kind of thing that could actually come in handy. The hero crafted yet another design for Takumu, and he's convinced, this time for sure, Takumu's going to land something that actually hits. Agatha is going to be absolutely overflowing with gratitude for this. Hibana and Takumu went head-to-head in the race, and when it was over, they decided to settle it with a duel. She swore she'd win no matter what, because losing would mean losing face. And he bowed, showing real respect for unwavering courage. And they absolutely nailed it. The hero fully believes Takumu's still going to come out stronger. They've already dropped the message. Our heroes are about to crash in any second. And just like that, they burst out of the tunnel at last. The sea towered out in front of them, stretching forever like a nightmare horizon. The moment they laid eyes on him, the crowd erupted with pure excitement. Eros pitched the idea to everyone. Let's go fishing. They planned to haul in a massive pile of fish, some for themselves and the rest for their wives. And everyone dropped into their seats, gearing up for the fishing showdown. Everyone was absolutely over the moon with joy. They'd finally carved a tunnel that stitched the country straight to the sea. Now it was time to crank up the plan and take the next step. The sea isn't the finish line at all. It's just the spark that starts everything, because the road ahead is packed with huge goals still waiting to be crushed. And then it hit him. He had to tell them about the wheat. Even the whole crowd of people still picked up their tools and worked the fields. And then, just like that, wheat finally sprouted in Carta Rosa. The moment you've been waiting for is here. Time to reap what we've earned. She leaned in and demanded to know how he somehow pulled in that many people. He shot back that every last potato was already in the bag. And this time, the long-awaited wheat was finally coming. When Hibana fired the question at him, what in the world was that thing? He leaned in and said it was a human-powered combine. So what about that wheelbarrow with the blade jutting out the end? People shove it, power it, and use it to reap, and honestly, they're on track to shatter brand new harvest records. He's just happy they finally have wheat, and he even rigged up a thrashing machine powered by a water wheel. But he probably pushed it too far, and Agatha will not stand for it. He snapped at the hero for talking way too much, then demanded, what if another country catches wind of all this? Hiro apologized, but Takumu only burst out laughing, because the huge harvest was all thanks to him. And that can only mean one thing. This year, they've finally got enough food to feed everyone. No one gets left behind. Thanks to innovative work with fertilizers, potato harvests skyrocketed. And because they hauled in so many fish, they need fewer potatoes. And with all that salt, they can keep their food pickled and safe. And now the fields explode with wheat, growing like crazy overnight. Somehow it all worked out for them. Right when it mattered most, cutting food costs is gone for good. When they hand out the food, loads of it piles up, and they don't waste a single bit, using the leftovers for two big reasons. First off, they stock up on supplies, just in case war breaks out. Come spring, neighboring countries are set to strike, so we'd better stock up on food supplies now. They go door to door and buy salt from their neighbors, because there's no way they won't notice their country finally getting better. They just have to wait a little longer. Gathering troops and stacking supplies takes time. To smash into Carta Rosa, you've got to cross those mountains. But winter dumps so much snow that you can't even get close. So yeah, it's pretty clear they'll kick off the invasion come spring. By spring, they'll have to power up enough to smash their neighbors. So yeah, they've already kicked off the whole setup, food supplies included. Then you'll have to forge an army. And sure, they'll swing magic swords, But that alone still won't cut it. He pushed to get Takuma training through the winter so he could get ready for war. And once war finally erupted, they'd tear the enemy apart and leave nothing standing. And they'll hand back every land and every life they stole from them. Hiro nodded along with Takuma, because the land they'd been forced to give up wasn't just fertile. It was packed with over 2,000 people. He's not just thinking about it. He's determined to save his people who are breaking under the weight of their suffering. So Takuma could start working immediately. Once that magic sword was in hand, there was no losing. But Agatha stepped in and told them to ease up a bit. Fear gripped him. What if they slipped in from the other side? Their neighbors are brutes, cold, mean, and ready for a fight. But somehow they've still got a shaky connection with them. If those attacks hit from here, the rest of the world won't wait. They'll demand reinforcements. But if they launch an attack and wipe them out, then they can finally forge ties with their neighbors. Because some countries will always ditch their neighbors the moment there's a good reason to do it. The hero suspects there are a dozen ugly reasons behind this betrayal, so they decide to keep their hands off. No questions, no touching, not yet. After Agatha finished talking, Takulu got every last detail, like it all clicked in his mind. Agatha steps in and says they might actually win this war, then presses Hiro to forge a weapon that can crush their neighbors. He told them if you've got time till spring, then you've got time, plain and simple. But they can pull it off only if they get the iron. He has the plans, yet they'll need a mountain of metal to make it happen. They can't just scrape up iron sand and call it a day. They're locked out of buying iron from other countries too. When Takuma asked, "Are you really going to make it on time?" he flashed a calm smile and told him, "Don't worry." At sea, his mind suddenly snapped into something wild, an idea that felt way too good to ignore. Agatha was pinning everything on him, because she truly believed he'd deliver. And just like that, they dropped the food talk and decided to brainstorm a whole new way to use it. His brother finally gave him the green light to run the Harvest Festival himself. The Harvest Festival promised a bountiful harvest and a much-needed break for their beloved people. So he floated the idea, but he couldn't shake the worry. Was it worth burning their reserves on a celebration that had been canceled 12 years ago? But now they finally can, and it's about to get real. They grind day and night to make their country thrive, and one day they'll come for their sister and bring her home. And when he finally wakes up, his father is going to be absolutely blown away. Then the hero gritted his teeth and chose to leave. And that's why today he'll be slammed with royal business. The Harvest Festival was in full roar, and the whole place felt like it was buzzing with excitement. Everyone chowed down, then broke into dancing, cheering, and games, like the whole place couldn't stop partying. A thunderous carriage burst out of the castle gates, rolling into the world like fate itself was on the move. Inside, our hero and Hibana sat shoulder to shoulder, watching the crowd light up and laugh like the night couldn't get any better. And this speech is about to crank this holiday up to full chaos mode. Alright, this is where I start scaling the stand. The soldiers were the first ones to spot him. The crowd exploded into cheers, shouting his name and thanking the prince for saving their entire country. Out of nowhere, someone yanked his attention and shouted, "Prince of Salt." After all, this was the best gift the prince ever handed them. And Hiro couldn't even wrap his head around why they kept calling him the Prince of Salt. They're obsessed with him because he handed back their salt like it was stolen hope. Takuma said he was proud of it because he made people smile. The people's love is the country's strongest cure, pure power that keeps everything healing and standing tall. Nayuki leapt in with cheers too, congratulating the Prince of Salt right then and there. He couldn't even figure out what kind of Prince of Salt he was meant to be. Suddenly, the crowd erupted in cheers and crowned him the Prince of Wheat. He just got another new nickname. Takuma burst out laughing at that damn fine nickname, like it was too good to be real. Agatha couldn't decide which nickname hit harder, Salt and Wheat, and the other was still a legendary win for the hero. Then Nayuki blurted out, "Let's call him the Prince of Salt and Wheat." The two of them nodded in perfect sync. Hiro even begged them, "Don't mess with names. After all, they handle the salt, and Agatha grinds the wheat." And he demanded to know why all the glory had to land on him. Then he grinned, like he knew exactly what was coming. He trusted his brothers' burning drive to save the country, and the moment he spilled every truth to them, he knew he'd made the right call. Then Takumu shot him a look and demanded he keep going. He gave a sharp nod, then spun toward the crowd and cleared his throat like he was about to unleash something big. Facing the crowd, he stepped forward and declared himself the third prince, Hiro Kararosa. People just somehow recognized him the moment he showed up, and they couldn't ignore how clearly they'd watched him grow from day one. The hero sucked in a deep breath like he was about to jump into the storm, and just like that he declared it. Starting that very day, he ruled as the king of Cardarosa. His family and friends quietly stood by him, giving him their silent backing. He dreams the same dreams as them, fights for them with everything he's got, and then pushes to share his thoughts with the people. First things first, I had to ask, has this country truly gotten better or not? They all roared in one voice that the country had gotten so much better, because now they had salt, fish, and bread. Then the hero leaned in and demanded, so it'll always be like this, right? The crowd surged together and shouted yes, all in one voice again. But the hero muttered that it'd probably be a brutal ride, not a walk in the park. Everyone shot me thoughtful stares, and a few looked straight up scared, like something terrible had just crept into the room. Their country's got miles to go before it's safe, but good news. They've stocked up with salt and enough food to last the entire winter. And that's where the story slams shut. Only he's having none of it, and he's furious that it ends there. He's craving even more good food, bigger laughs, and all the cozy comforts he can get his hands on. And that still isn't enough for him. He refuses to settle for just not going hungry, and he demanded to know whether they'd actually downed the ale Nayuki had cooked up. The moment it hit their tongues, they cheered. Joy flooded in like wildfire. They're calling it an extravagance they don't even need. If all they want is to live, go ahead and leave it behind. And that's how it builds the country up and fills the heart with something real. To protect all that wealth, that's what real happiness looks like. He's determined to level up this country, and he wants everyone here to rise with him, and he'll drag them straight into happiness. He's not chasing glory to save the country. He's chasing something bigger. A real, better tomorrow. And he roared to his entire nation, shouting, "Rise up." He knew he couldn't pull this off by himself, so he pushed forward, and his friends charged in behind him. But none of this cuts it. He can't swing this sword yet. He needs the power of the people. Everyone rose to their feet, stunned into silence, and some of them were visibly trembling. Suddenly, every single one of them roared at once, "Long live King Hero." He practically couldn't stop smiling at that bright, instant reaction. They don't fear death or hunger at all. They stare ahead, trusting that tomorrow's going to be brighter. People clung to the future he painted for them, like it was the only road ahead. And in just a blink, they'll be living like this for real. They'll rake in fortune and live like everything finally goes right. He swore that if they would follow him, he'd turn the kingdom of Cardarosa into a booming paradise. This is the very first promise he makes as king. After the speech, fireworks ripped across the sky, blasting bright color everywhere. The soldiers absolutely crushed it with the fireworks. But honestly, fireworks feel like a total waste. But it's a breathtaking, heart-lifting sight. The kind of waste he's determined to turn into a smile for everyone. And he prayed that anyone who laid eyes on him would finally feel what he was trying to say. Someone leaned in and shouted congratulations, celebrating the moment he finally became king. It was Hibana, pure electric chaos in human form. She said Hiro was overthinking again, right there during the festival. Maybe he's chasing the impossible dream of making everyone happy. With her by his side, it feels like he can chase any dream that crosses his path. That's why he's begging her to follow him, right beside him, no matter what. Next, he's hunting for iron, so he'll cross to the far side of the sea to get it. Hibana nodded right away, because she's literally his sword. That night they threw a celebration, and hope lit up everything. He rejoiced so hard he straight up forgot every single year of pain. Saving someone isn't the whole story, and living isn't the whole point either. Sure, he's finally learned how to live, but that's just the beginning. If he's chasing something bigger than the horizon, but he's satisfied with what he has right now, he'll never be able to push forward. Hiro Cardarosa, reborn as a prince, now fights tooth and nail to make his country thrive.